Monsters, creatures, legends. You know them. You slay them. But do you ever get to play them? Sure, defeating a giant in single combat, solving a sphinx's riddle, or even outwitting a devil is a lot of fun. But what if you were the giant, sphinx, or devil? What if you could become the monster? Well, now you can. Continuing the tradition of Year of Monsters, Roll for Combat is proud to present the Year of Legends. Every month, you'll receive a new legendary creature that you can play as a character for either 5e or Pathfinder. Now you too can play as a fallen angel, a stony gargoyle, a brain-eating seraphage, an ocular evil eye, a towering giant, a teeming swarmblood, a moon-blessed were-creature, a tree-like arboreal, a miraculous golem-born, an accursed lamia, an ominous psychopomp, or a riddling sphinx. You can get all this for less than a cup of coffee every month. But don't delay. If you back the Year of Legends Kickstarter now, you'll receive Devils, a bonus 13th ancestry at the start of the new year. These infernal creatures from hell are the perfect complement to January's other ancestry, Angels. If you back the Kickstarter today, you'll receive both Devils and Angels to kick off 2024. Otherwise, you'll have to wait until 2025 for the Devils to appear. So, won't you give monster characters a chance? Back the Year of Legends today.
Hello. We're live.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Hello. No, Nat, you're wearing a Dungeons and Dragons sweatshirt.
Isn't that ironic? It wasn't intentional. It was just chilly, and I wanted to cozy up, but then I realized it, and I left it on.
I'm wearing my cotton armor t-shirt, so
I'm
you're in
my
good company,
t-shirt-
I guess.
T-shirt.
Look, in full honesty, I mainly wear this sweater for the design on the back, because I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah, so
It is a
sit
cool
like
design on
that
the
the
back.
entire stream. Sit with your back to us.
All right.
So now we
There
can
you
see
go.
your face. That would be perfect. Hello, everyone. It is I and Mark and No Nat 1.
Been
And
a
the
while.
first of No Nat 1s and the first of 2 weeks of streaming where we are going to be going through in detail the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remaster. Is this Pathfinder 2 squared? Is this Pathfinder 2.2? Is this Pathfinder 2A?
2R?
2R? It's like, it's hard to, it's like, it's already second and now it's a remaster. But
Yeah, I guess the remaster could be an R. 2R could be a good
2R,
way to do
2R.
it. I think that's a decent abbreviation.
But see,
Yeah.
here's the thing. I don't think enough has changed to count it
Oh,
as a
definitely.
separate edition.
No.
Oh,
I was
definitely
actually,
not. And
I was
I
gonna
want to
say
make
that.
that clear to everybody
Yeah.
before we start, is that these are preview streams. The blogs have been preview blogs, except one that I think marketing put out that showed something about like the phase of play that was basically the same. But most of these blogs have been focused on like what is different. And that will make you possibly get a skewed idea of this remaster, because in fact, if you just go into it being like, I'm going to turn to page whatever and look at the rules there, there's a good chance that just like all of those rules are the same, or that only one small thing has changed, depending on what section you went to.
Yeah, I see people making the comparison to D&D 3.5. Not even that big. Not
No.
even 3 to 3.5.
no,
I would call this
definitely
2.1. This was a massive errata, if anything, with some name changes.
not. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing I came across is that when I looked at it, it was hard for me to find the changes. In fact, I'm like, this kind of looks exactly more or less the same, or there's a lot of very tiny changes, and yes, there's some larger ones, but it is 90. I mean, I'm sure someone will figure it out, but it's probably like 98 to 99% the same as Pathfinder 2nd Edition. However, that 1% is different enough that
A
like
1% change in DNA is the difference between chimpanzees and humans.
Yes.
It's less than 1%, but yeah.
It is less than 1%.
So
Yes.
it's a big change, but it's not big enough for a new
You can make
version.
a big splash with like one sentence.
Yeah.
Yes.
And obviously a big reason for this, not even the rule changes, but it was all the word changes to get over to the orc license.
Yeah. If we talk about it being 98%, maybe it's less, but maybe it's more like 96%. But of that, 4 to 5 to 2, however many percent of the words changed, the vast majority of them are renames because of the OGL, which I think, I mean, I've looked at a lot of the renames. I would say like 90% of them are big improvements, and I like the new names better. There's like maybe a few where I was like, that old name had a nice charm to it or something like that. But 90% of them, I would say, this is just a cool new name. This is better than what we had.
I know I'm going to accidentally be saying attack of opportunity for the next 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to say reactive. Off guard has been super easy. Off guard feels so natural.
I like off guard.
Reactive strike is taking some like conscious effort.
Well,
yeah, reactive strike's a little tricky. I'm sure Steven will be saying attack of opportunity till the end of remaster.
End of time.
That's okay. End of time. All right. Yeah. Time will just end. Collapse it to a singularity. And like, at that point, Balthazar, the sage of time, is going to be there at the end of time with Steven. And Steven's going to be like, do I get an attack of opportunity for that?
Because it just rolls off the tongue. And we also say AOO a lot. So it's just...
It's a Gaspar, who's this time one. Balthazar's the flying one. It doesn't matter.
It's going to be hard to change. But anyhow, so for those of you here, looks like we have quite a bit. Here is the schedule for the next 2 weeks. So every day this week, except for the weekends, and next week, we are going to be talking about the remaster, probably at 3 o'clock with a guest. We might repeat guests. But today we're talking about the remaster overview. Then tomorrow we'll talk about Bard in detail, then Cleric, then Druid, then Fighter at the end of the week. And then next week we kick it off with Ranger, Rogue, Witch, Wizard. And then finally on Friday the 10th, we will go over the GM core overview, because there's actually a lot of things that moved from the player core to the GM core, like magic items. Like there's actually a big... I don't know how much the rules would change, but the actual organization changed a huge amount. That actually was probably even a bigger change, in my opinion, is the organization structure of these books, which is way better.
Well,
now,
of course.
Way better.
I like the organization because of the fact that there was always the selling point of we don't want you to have the 2 books to have everything. And I get that, but just in a world where people will take one thing as a talking point and use it as an immediate nope, the 2 books they're used to getting, they're used to buying that. They're not going to turn that into an immediate nope. Whereas they'd be like, your book is this long, it must mean it's impossible to learn the game.
I love how
for the
much
one
smaller
big book.
it is.
And this will cause massive numbers of people to refuse to check out the game. And whether or not it's easier to use with the big book or 2 small books, it doesn't matter. Like, just for getting people into the game, the 2 books separated like that is just the better play.
Yes. Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, handing someone a 400-page book versus a 600-page book is very different. Just visibly. Like, visibly, that... okay. Whoa, visible the lights. We're good. Yeah, I think I've got my core right here. Just showing anybody the original core is just so intimidating. But yeah, like to this day, people don't realize this is a GM guide and a player guide all in one.
Right.
Just
right.
The raw size.
Well, it makes sense because you kind of want to not put all your eggs in one basket, but it's a lot easier pill to swallow to have people buy one book, but now, obviously, the rules have changed so much and the game's been around so long and I originally heard that the first book was something like 800 pages. I had to get cut down to what it is now, like 600. So instead of trying to cut everything out that you can't fit, just make 2 books, or in this case, 4 books. So, because you still got Monster Core and Player Core too. So, a few things before we begin. First of all, do like and do subscribe. And turn on the bell if you want to be alerted whenever these go live, because I might have 1 or 2 sneaky streams mixed in here. Not even Mark knows about the sneaky streams.
Even well, wait a minute, because I heard there might be some sneaky ones on like the weekend or something, but I don't know about if you're going to do even more than that.
I might be doing a sneaky stream on Wednesday with Professor Dungeon Master.
I didn't even know about that. That's awesome.
Yes. He and I are working that one out. And that one, we're going to probably talking all about Hasbro's earnings and what's happening in the world of Dungeons and Dragons and Magic.
Business.
That's business crap. That's business. That's why it'll be a different stream, but I really want to talk about that because these earnings were insanely interesting. So
they're very interesting. But for now, we're going to talk about the remaster.
Yes, now we're going to talk about the remaster. I'm not going to get into it. Don't worry. I'm not going on tangent. And then also, we're going to go through. Mark asked for some questions on Reddit, and we only got about 10 million questions. So
there's a lot, but we're going to prioritize super chats and then like stream questions that are not super chats, and I'll mix in some of the ones from Reddit. Even if we get an infinite number in the stream and it's more than we can do, I will still going to answer the ones that were like the most popular ones on Reddit anyway. And depending on how many we have in the stream, I'll try to mix in more of the ones from Reddit as well.
So the easiest, fastest way is to have your question answered is to do a super chat. It's not that we don't see them in the chat, but it does scroll by pretty quick, and the super chats, we get to pin them and see them. So we'll always, even if we go for 5-10 minutes, we'll always go back to a super chat, but we might miss a question. But we will always answer a super chat. So just send those in and we'll get to those. Again, we might not go into detail on, does the fighter have this feat at level 9? I'm like, we probably won't go into that as much because this is the overview where we'll kind of go over things in general, what changed in general, our thoughts, feelings on this.
The classes, we have a specific day for each class where we're going to do a deep dive directly, completely into those classes. Correct. And to give a little bit of a spoiler ahead of time, other than the OGL related changes, the classes are lion's share where the changes were. If I were to, I do not know like what the mandate was that they specifically said to people when they were doing this remaster project. Obviously, it's a tour de force that they got this done after being blindsided with all of the OGL stuff and then having to quickly do the remaster, fix all of this, and get it out and printed so that it could ship by this amount of time.
10 months.
That's remarkable. If you look at the list of people who are on what it says is like the remaster team, which you can see in the credits in this book, it has people who are not on the rules and lore team. So they clearly did an all hands on deck process to make this happen. And it is fantastic that they managed to do so. However, I'm guessing it was more of a like, let's change all the things we have to change. Let's talk about anything lots of people have been complaining about, and then let's redo all of the classes.
Yes.
That's my guess of what, I don't know. I don't have inside information of what the mandate was, because other than the classes, there don't seem to be any changes that were just kind of like, I guess, out of the blue changes. They're all ones that are like, oh yeah, that, I could see this possibly. There are a few other maybe that you could be like, okay, those may have been partially done for aesthetic reasons. Like the cantrip damage change was clearly for aesthetic reasons that were pointed out in the blog. They actually did a blog where they specifically stated why. And so, but I think on the whole, most of the changes other than OGL based ones are in the classes.
So let me go through my stuff, because then you guys are probably going to talk a lot more about this than me.
Oh, you think I prepared for this?
Well, you guys, I'll be honest.
You don't need to prepare to talk a lot. I've talked to you before.
No. Well, to be fair, I don't go into the nitty gritty of the classes as much as you guys do. I just don't. Like, I'm a little bit more into the GM side, and also I'm a little bit more into larger mechanics of the world and the larger scope of the math. And I'm more into the big picture than the nitty gritty. Like, even before the stream, like, this combined with this feat, I'm like, don't care. Not that I don't care, but I never play a player. So I'm always the GM. So I'm more interested in seeing like how the GM side changed and how some of the more structural rules changed, in my opinion. Like, to me, that's what I'm really care about. So I know you guys are going to go off. So let me get my stuff out, and then I'll probably be quiet for most of the stream. Anyhow, a few more quick things. First of all, we only have 109 likes and 450 people. That's way too few. If we get 200 likes, we'll make No Nat sing. Because he loves to sing.
I didn't sign anything.
Well, there you are. We'll make you do something. You like singing.
Are you going to make me do the Elder rap again, Steven?
Well, the Elder rap's getting worked on right now, by the way.
Yeah, the audio is done on the Elder rap. We just need the visuals of.
Oh my God, we got 50 likes in 1 second for doing that. Okay.
Wow. Hey, what's in this for me? What's in this for me? Hello?
Show how much people love you. People love No Nat. They're like, "Oh, No Nat, we haven't seen you in a while. We want to hear you sing," and then tell about your mint mocha. What were you drinking? All that mint stuff. Something else I want to mention is that the book is available as a PDF now. It's going out to subscribers because people are like, "How are you getting the book early?" So if you're a subscriber, you're going to have the GM core and the player core in your PDFs soon.
I mean, eventually, once it goes to you,
it's starting to go out
at some point
today.
usually between now and release date, subscribers get it. And also,
the main thing is starting to go out today.
Some people should have it by now.
Yeah,
I think some people probably do. But also media folk, content creators received it just a bit earlier so that we had time to read it over before subscribers had it and do some videos and other things like that based on Paizo. Now, Paizo told us, hey, don't show every single page of the book. So we're going to be judicious about that, but we will answer a lot of questions.
I'm not even set up to show pages. So
there you go. We're going to be super judicious about it.
Well, because I don't think it's necessary because we're talking in general, and maybe for the Bard ones we'll do that, but for now,
for the classes, I think we could show a list of class feats or something like that.
I don't think it's necessary.
The only thing that I would have maybe shown is the table of contents at most, and I don't know.
Yeah,
because this is such an overview. I'm going to answer questions, and I will use specific language if people need specific details, but that doesn't mean we're going to flash up a ton of pages on this one.
And also a few more quick things. Some people are saying, I think it comes out, it's November 15th. The physical books come out, and people are saying it's going to be available overseas. It'll be available everywhere. So, go to your local game store. That's where you can even pre-order the really cool, line art covers. Which
is there any news on how and when Archives of Nephis will be reflecting these books?
So
probably on the day they normally do.
Pretty
but
soon.
I didn't hear.
I mean, I've been talking. So the guys who do our Foundry modules is the exact same team who's been doing the remaster. Because boy, they've been busy, and I've been talking to the Ians, and they're like remaster. So I know they're working hard on the remaster for Foundry.
We're over 200.
No, I know that was quick. Start warming up those vocal cords. Get some tea, and then
all right. But the twist is, I won't sing until 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so people need to stay for 45 minutes.
Oh, even better. We got a pro with us. I forgot. No, we got the pro. He knows how to really milk
I'm approaching my 4th year, Steven. I've been doing this for a while.
I know, you're the pro. You're better than
when
us.
he said that, we lost 4 viewers. They were all just like, that's it. Bye.
That's it. I'm not waiting. And the PDFs will be available November 15th for non-subscribers as well. So anyhow, long story short, it should be everywhere. And from what I understand, also, I don't know if Archives of Nephis is doing this, but Foundry's doing this. There's not going to be a pre-remaster and post-remaster. This is the game. It's way too hard to have 2 versions, so they just updated it. So
much is the same anyway.
Yeah, but the point is some people I know it's going to be a question, so I'm just getting out of the way. There's no, is this pre or post? It's no, this is the game now. This is second edition.
And that kind of ties into Lord God's super chat, which is it really compatible with original 2E, or is it 2.5 or 3E? Is this the same game?
It is so compatible.
It is really, really, really compatible.
Yeah. I mean,
let us suppose a few things. Let's suppose that you were I love exactly what was written in my original core rulebook. all of those rules, those classes, I don't want the changed classes. I don't want Warrior Bard to be able to strike and extend their compositions or whatever changes the case may be. If you're that person, you could just play the ones from the core rulebook. And the only thing that is going to even hit you up at all in the remaster is the OGL changes. So you'll run into spells and conditions that you may have to look up, and you'll have to decide what spell school the new spells are from, because it's not going to tell you since those are removed for OGL. Mm-hmm. And maybe decide what alignment a new monster is based on its personality description that's given in the text. Or just say they're all neutral, I guess. Whatever you want to do. Like, I
don't think there are actually any new
so
conditions.
Easy to use the new content in your old game. Now, converting the old game and be like, I'm going to convert it so it's 100% fidelity to the new rules. Obviously, lots of small things are going to change, but it's possible that it won't really have much of an effect at all, especially if your character already had 3 focus points, because I think the biggest meta-defining change of the entire remaster is that you can get back all of your focus points. And so even if you're not a spellcaster, you're highly encouraged to get 3 focus points. Mm-hmm. Find something your non-spellcaster could do that's utility for like an action, a free action, or a reaction, and just use it 3 times per fight with a 30-minute rest if you can. Mm-hmm. Not all groups and GMs are going to let you do that every time, but I think enough of them probably will that we're going to see that meta shift. But other than that, I don't think any of the changes are going to be like now the whole meta of everything is even different. And just so much of the text is literally exactly the same. Like you can tell that it's even the way that they do the credits in the book in the table of contents, it shows you that, because like the authors, it still says just the authors of the original books, and then it talks about it being development and additional writing when some new spells and of things were written for the additional writing is partially additional writing from the advanced player's guide that was brought into the core rulebook. So even some of that isn't from the remaster. It's partially new remastered spells and things that were written. And then there's a remastered development team, because it basically was like an extra development errata path. So that's my answer to Lord God.
Let me finish my spiel, because I'm still not done. And then we'll get into it.
Go for it. I was just doing the super chat.
I know, super chat. Last but not least, if you're not aware, we have a Kickstarter going on. We did this thing called the Year of Monsters at Roll for Combat, where we released a new ancestry every month throughout the year 2023. We had doppelgangers, we had mimics, we had demons. Oni comes out in 2 days. We just had gremlins. And it was such a big success that we are doing the Year of Legends. And this time we're doing 13 ancestries, because we snuck an extra one in there, devils. So if you back now, you will get 13 ancestries. And these are big ancestries. 7,000 words minimum. It comes out to like 18 pages.
I don't think it's 7,000 words minimum.
Well, it will be by the time
it comes out to a lot of pages.
It's coming out when I'm done with it. It's going to be 7,000 words.
I'm just telling everyone that it is not 7,000 words minimum on the outline. And 7,000 words is one of the sciences that it can be.
Okay.
But some of them will be under 7,000 words probably.
Okay. Well, anyhow, they're very large.
They are huge. They're massive. Everything else is right. I'm just in case someone goes and checks and is like, technically, this one is 6,500 words.
Okay, well, they will
money
be.
back.
All right, it's going to be gigantic. I'm going to make sure now that they're all 7,000 after that. The one way or the other, I will make sure I'll put in some new sidebars just to get it up there, and I'm going to make the lore even longer. But the point is that you got devils, you got angels, we have swarm bloods in there, and the best one, I saw someone, a werewolf. Now you're a were creature. We got a were crocodile now. You can be were ravens. You can be a were rat. You can be a were anything you want. You want to be a werewolf? You could be a werewolf, or you could be were whatever. The best thing is if you pledge now, and this was an early backer, but I'm going to do it now. If you pledge during the stream for $99 or more, we have animated tokens. So all the pictures are animated, nearly 200. And you could see it on the Kickstarter, and you'll get those. And let me tell you, you haven't played until you have animated tokens, because I thought they were cool. And then I started to use them, and I'm like, oh my God, these are like a game changer. It's like when
I have to admit, when Steven first told me animated tokens, it sounded like a cool idea, but I didn't know like how awesome they would look. And when then he showed them to me, they look really cool.
They're very cool. Anyhow, you can do it. It's YOL.rollforcombat.com or Kickstarter.rollforcombat.com. So check it out. Check out the link. And this is obviously designed. Who are the writers we have? We have you, Mark.
We have a legendary cast of writers. So we have me. Then we also have Paizo developer for Starfinder Society, Jessica Catalan. We have Paizo senior developer for Rules and Lore, Jason Keeley. And we have Jessica Redicop and Michael Raccoon, who are both Paizo veteran freelancers who have cover credits on big core rulebook lines. In Jessica's case, it's Rage of Elements, and Michael Raccoon is Dark Archive.
Correct.
So, and they've also both written a ton of other things. I'm pointing out their rulebook cover credit because not a lot of people outside of Paizo have those.
Yep. Anyhow, with that, you guys can get at it. I'm gonna start it off, and then we'll answer the super chats.
I want to hear your thing first, Steven, since you said it will be mostly us.
Of this book, or a couple, and it's not what you're gonna think it's gonna be. My first favorite thing is I like the green.
Oh, I love it.
They went from red to green as the primary color, and that's a very smart design decision because immediately you'll know if you're looking at a remaster versus the original. It's a very good design decision. I also think the design is much more refined overall. They'd used a better font selection. It sounds small, but this is a big deal. When you're reading a 400-page book, the layout is key, and I think the layout's way nicer, way stronger. I love this green. Oh my God. The first time I saw, because everyone looks at the character sheet, the original Pathfinder 2nd edition character sheet was a train wreck. When I saw that thing, I was like, yikes. That thing was nasty. And the new one is way, way better.
It's better.
It's better. They do little things like they even have little icons for like the armor class and the melee strikes and the range. Now, everyone uses Path Builder. A lot of people use these online tools anyhow, but still, it's nice to have this. And the sheet just looks so much better.
I think the biggest issue, and it hasn't been fixed with the remastered character sheet, but I don't think you can fix it, is if the first thing you show a new player is the character sheet,
right,
they will run for the hills.
Yeah, well, this one definitely looks a lot more elegant. That last one,
oh yeah,
it was ugly and it was blocky and it was difficult to read and confusing. This one's a lot more elegant.
Definitely.
And then finally, my last thing is mixed ancestry. Mwah, chef's kiss. You can take any two ancestries and mix them. If I was a player, I'd be going crazy because you can now take the Battle Zoo ancestry's dungeon ancestry and the dragon ancestry, and you can make a dungeon and dragon. If you want,
you already could be an avatar dragon,
but now
yes,
you could actually be a dungeon and dragon with an avatar of an intelligent weapon. So you could be dungeons and dragons if the intelligent weapon's name is an and. The ampersand.
I always said when we started the PF2 that we could have easily done that tech.
I know.
But people in the lore for Golarion at the time, because it was tied to the OGL lore of which ancestries could have offspring, was like, well, no, but it's only half elves and half orcs. But I was like, well, we could do a sidebar about the fact that you can do this for other ancestries. And so, I was working on the ancestry chapter. I put the sidebar in there, but that was always an optional rule. And now I'm really, really happy to see that it is just out there and anybody can do it. So I'm with you, Steven.
It's one of those weird things that should not matter to a lot of people, but to a lot of rules as written, like really strict lawyers, if something is a sidebar optional rule, they're so much more likely to ban it and say, no, you can't do that at this table. And so I think taking it off the sidebar and putting mixed ancestry right alongside everything else, I think that's going to encourage, obviously, GMs to let people do it in their games, but it's also more so going to encourage people to play with it, to play their human gnome or their dwarf elf.
In the game now.
Exactly.
It's in the world. It's not just a variant that at the GM discretion you could add. It's actually part of the rules.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. It's one of these subtle differences, but like it's right here. It's core. It's got its own section. It's not an optional thing that the GM could just wave their hand and say, I'm not going to do that. It's like, look, this is right here. Like, yes, you're the GM. It's your game. You can do anything you want, but it's almost, as we call it in Roll for Combat, you're giving permission. By putting it in the rules, you're giving permission for people to do it. You don't really need the
games
permission.
Are game of permission, and sort of it's almost sort of like a family structure where the parents are the GM and like the game rules, and so like one of them is going to be more permissive, or one of them will be like, I don't know, like when the game rule book is like, at your GM's discretion, you can do this. It's like, I don't know. Ask your mom, right?
That's exactly.
And when you don't want to say no, but you also don't want to say yes necessarily, and then you kind of say the GM gets to decide. Whereas if the book just says no, then if the GM wants to say yes, then the GM's the cool one. If the book says I don't know, ask your GM, then if the GM wants to say yes, the GM can be the cool one. The problem is when the book just says yes to something that then the GM has to say no later on, it can cause issues.
It's rare, but it leads to...
It doesn't really happen very, very often in Pathfinder. It's something that a lot of people mention for 5e, where it'll just allow things and the GM has to ratchet back, and then... Because the human person who's actually there with you all the time, being the not fun, strict one, is just not good for social dynamics.
It feels so bad.
If the book is too strict... you can just be like,
exactly, you can be the nice guy.
You can just be like, oh, those designers are just so mean, I'm the nice one.
It felt bad. So I just joined another 5e campaign, and last session someone used a knockback effect to push one bear into another, and just to try to mess with them, knock them over or whatever, have something cool happen, because they just got bashed into each other. And it was so sad to see the DM go, well, there's no rules for if this happens, so nothing happens. And that was it.
Yikes.
And I was like, oh my God.
Wow, that's
yikes.
Bad. Anyhow, there's other small things like recall knowledge is much better, aid is much better. There's a lot of little things like that. But
did aid get improved?
Yeah.
I thought I looked at it. I couldn't see a difference.
DC went down to 15.
The base DC got decreased to 15 because there were mainly two issues with aid. Potentially. One of them was that it's pretty difficult at first level, and you're just more likely to cause harm than help unless you're very good at it. And the other one was it's way too easy at high level, and you just perfectly succeed no matter what. The reason for this is that, there was some idea, one of the ones that I and some others suggested during the process of creating PF2 was to put a simple DC of some kind that scales in some way in there for aid. But the problem was that proved among a larger group to be too complicated, that you had to look it up. And people said they didn't want that. They wanted just one DC.
That's
so
fair.
20 wound up in there, which was it was not great in either direction. So now we have 15, which is even more seriously potentially problematic in the other direction, but not by much, because you're eventually going to auto-critically succeed anyway, and it makes it so much better at low levels where people start playing the game and start learning what aid is.
And you're more likely to want to aid at low levels,
Yeah.
When your bonuses are low, you're going to want to help each other out more. Once you're a legendary athletics level 13 fighter, you don't need aid on athletics anymore.
Yeah, and it's a problem if it's a problem if they just learn that they can't use aid because it's a bad at level 1, and then they don't use it when it's great at higher levels because it's learned weakness. When you learn that you're an elephant when it's little and can't pull out a post, and then when it gets big, it just doesn't even try it because it thinks it can't. So I would argue that even though the upper level stuff is exacerbated by this change, that it's much more valuable that the lower level has been brought into line. And if it does still say the GM can change the value in either direction. So if you are one of the people who has some issues with it getting into a critical success all the time right away, and now it's even more right away, you could raise it to a higher DC if you want.
That's what Rohit says here in chat, but I actually have to disagree. Raising it, depending on the situation, I'm all for that. But anything that just gets harder as you level up feels awful, because something is getting harder because you're getting better, which doesn't make any sense for the same benefit.
Well, it should depend on the situation. It's not like if I'm aiding you to climb an oak tree at level 1, and I'm aiding you to climb the same oak tree at level 10, then it should be the same.
Yep.
But if I'm aiding you, arguably, right, if I'm aiding you to attack Tree Raiser, maybe the difficulty of actually tricking Tree Raiser, because I'd be like, okay, how are you going to aid Brogan to attack Tree Raiser, says GM Steven. I said, well, I'm going to do that by just distracting him a little bit here. And I'm going to roll.
Technically, you could use the create a diversion action.
Yes, that could be creating a diversion. But it's like, I swing my blade and try to distract him with a not a feint, just to aid with an attack roll. And it's like, arguably, Tree Raiser could be harder to do that on than a giant rat, right? So you could have a GM who says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. It's either 15 or it's the standard DC for the creature's level, but actually the very easy DC. They're DC -5 or something like that, whichever is higher. And so that would make a level 20 monster a DC 35, which is still very, very easy to succeed when you're around that level, and crit succeed, but it's not like everybody with untrained improvisation is going to crit succeed, even if they literally put 0 investment into it on any roll of the D20, which is a thing. But it's in there. It says you can do that. The GM can already do that with the roll as written in the remaster.
Okay, so a 5-minute discussion on aid was a lot of fun. So for now, we're going to try to make these 1 to 2 minutes per question, because we got a lot of questions. Because I don't know if everyone wanted to go that deep dive into aid. So
several people asked for aid on the Reddit too. So I think that's
fair enough. And I didn't look at the edits as much.
So we have 2 super chats to do real fast. Aaron House at Archives and Methods said they'll have both in Shellen's corner.
Yeah, that means they're going to have PF1 and PF Remaster. That makes sense. That is a online read-only database. It's very easy to have multiple versions. Pathfinder in Foundry is an interactive. It's way harder. Like you have to choose where you're drawing the line. And we actually were talking with the team about this months ago, because I myself was wondering how they were going to handle it, since all of our products are in Pathfinder and Path Builder, is that we had to figure out how we're going to handle it. And they told us they're just going forward, and that's it. And so it's going to make it so we can, also, because a lot of people ask, are we going to redo our products for version remaster? And the answer is yes. If necessary, we will update all of our products. Good news is we don't have to update that much. So that's that.
There you go. The other super chat is from Xavier B. It says, new to Pathfinder, it's so hard to get physical stuff like beginner gods, minis, and pawns. The new customer experience is terrible. Are they sacrificing physical products for VTT? I think it's just like, what happened is you joined right after the OGL crisis, when the number of products got into a crunch, because a lot of people started buying Pathfinder products, and it got into probably an issue of the supply. Also, they had to decide how many to reprint before the remaster, which was going to be like a remastered version of some of that stuff. Now, the minis are done by a completely different company.
Yeah. And also keep
that
in
shouldn't
mind,
be affected by that at all.
There's been a lot going on. There's been, both Paizo and Wizards have raised the prices for their books twice in the last 2 years, because of just costs for shipping and warehousing and global distribution, and paper's gone through. Everything's gone through the roof.
Yep.
So physical products in every category is getting, I wouldn't say more restrictive or harder to find, but they're just being much more careful to create physical products for products they actually think will sell physical media of.
It feels like physical products are becoming a luxury rather than the norm.
They are. We've discussed this many, many, many times. If you watch Roll for Combat Live, we do this every Wednesday at 3. For those of you new, and we talk
say
about
that
this all
physical
the
products
time.
are a luxury every Wednesday. No, just
Well, they're getting there. They're getting there.
They are really.
I just saw the new Yakuza video game is not even releasing, and it's for like Xbox and PlayStation. They're not releasing a disc.
Because why would you?
Next month. They're just digital only. And I'm like, that's a huge game. That's not like some third party.
Massive.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, that's the beginning of something. Next, we got Brian.
Brian,
we know well. I know crafting got updated. Does the remaster address complex crafting and the quick setup feat from Treasure Vault at all? Also, hey, no Nat. I don't know the answer to this.
It just says it takes 2 days or one if you have the formula.
So crafting's the same as it was?
Or no, it used to take 4 days.
4 days.
So it just takes fewer days. And so now at this point, like, especially if you have the formula, it's very rare that you would ever want to earn income instead of crafting if you have crafting. Like, you might as well use a regular craft so you can always be at your maximum item level. But there's some situations where you would still want to earn income with crafting if somebody gave you a commission that was a higher level task for some reason. So, it does not address that.
But yeah, so
Jeremy Dragon
half as long though. It used to be 4 days, right?
Yeah. So it changes it, but it doesn't address those treasure vault things, which are kind of related to the old rules. So it makes sense. They're gonna have to do something else if they want to do that.
Okay.
Jeremy Dragon says ruffian rogues ? Martial weapons get sneak attack ? So yes, martial weapons do get sneak attack, as do advanced, but the limitation on damage die size goes down to D6 for advanced, which makes sense because if you kept it at D8, you would just be able to stack on massive numbers of weird traits on that D8 weapon, and it would just be a weapon that was obviously like a lot different than the weapons that used to be working on. So that's a cool expansion for Ruffian Rogues.
An interesting thing here is this makes if you're using the dual class variant, Fighter, Ruffian, Rogue with like a D8 longbow, that's insane.
I think you already can sneak attack with longbows.
Oh yeah, right. It's ranged weapons. I'm sure there's still some crazy
It's still good. It's still good. Don't get me wrong. Also, you can do a one-handed fighter ruffian rogue with some kind of one-handed weapon that works for those rules.
Disarm synergy.
Like an Unholy sword, yes, and then use disarming, twist, and agile grace in order to make your second attack at -2 map, whether or not you actually care about disarming. Maybe they don't even have a weapon.
Right.
And then do tons of sneak attack damage on all of them.
Self-setup.
It's dual class, and you allowed them to dual class in 2 martial classes, which dual class told you probably that you shouldn't do. So at that point, I'm okay with that being obscenely powerful, right?
Oh yeah. Dual class theory crafting is where the game just goes into ridiculous territory, but it's fun.
Well, I just love that idea. That's why I put dual class in the game mastery guide.
Thank you.
So Anthony Peterson says, I'm excited about the increased possibility of character role playing with the new update, like the new magic schools. Any thoughts?
I love how much a lot of things that got big changes, like the cleric and the witch and the wizard. I love how much more emphasis is on the flavor of their subclass. The mechanics are still there. They're still impactful mechanics, but the choices you're making are much more based off the type of character you want to be playing. You know, not just what kind of spells your wizard wants to cast, but how did your wizard learn to cast spells? Where did they study?
Yeah, I think it opens up so many possibilities for cool design space for creating more wizard schools, which you could not do when all magic had to be divided into 8 schools, for making there be some things that maybe wizards don't have to have, which before you couldn't do because the specialist for that 8th of all of the schools would be like, why am I missing so many of the spells from my school? Thus causing the arcane list to have a lot of things. Mm-hmm. It opens up so many possibilities to create an illusionist or necromancer based class that previously the wizard's like, wait, I'm the illusionist or I'm the necromancer. I should be the main person for this, but now you just can do it because wizard isn't eating your lunch of all of these different concepts, right? So I think it opens up a lot of opportunities. We'll talk about it more in the wizard stream. Obviously, it is more restrictive than getting all the spells that Paizo will ever publish now and for in the future in 1/8 of the schools, to have it limited to 2 things. But it has so much potential.
So real quick, because it looks like some people are asking questions about the GM core and even other classes. So here's the schedule for the next 2 weeks. For those of you who are late, so every day this week and next week, probably at 3 p.m. Depends, because we're going to have a guest for each one. It'll be Mark, myself, and a special guest. But do subscribe, do turn on the alert so that you are alerted when these go live. But tomorrow we'll do Bard, then Cleric, then Druid, then Fighter. Then next week, Ranger, Rogue, Witch, Wizard. And then GM Core Overview will be next Friday. And so now we're talking about the remaster overview, but mostly player core.
Mostly player core. The big GM core one is going to be on Friday. We will answer questions that are about GM core, though we just aren't going to go into it deeply on our own.
No.
So there's Kirby Dragon says an idea of ruffian rogue whirlwinding with a bow staff, which is pretty rad as well.
Mm-hmm.
Forlorn Knight is wondering which of the wizard schools that are currently in here we would pick as being the most similar philosophically to the Magambia from Strength of Thousands. That's an interesting question.
I would wager Magambia would, especially one of that size, would offer multiple different courses.
They definitely do. They even have 5 different
that you play
5 whole different branches you can pick. Mm-hmm. But they are asking, of the ones in the player core, are there any that are just like, oh my gosh, this is a huge match for Magambia?
Civil wizardry, if I had to guess.
Civic would be one for some of them. I would say that the Tempest Sun mages in Magambia probably like battle magic, whereas the Emerald Bows might take mentalism because of the fact that they're not spies, they're just diplomats. They're just diplomats. And then I think the Rain Scribes, who are always just kind of wandering around and helping guide people through areas, might be like, it depends on the situation. Like Civic kind of fits for them, and Ars Grammatica with the numbers and letters might fit the Cascade Bearers, who are like the super deep dive, research the theory of magic
nerdiest
people.
Wizards. I just love that literally the word grammar is in that wizard school. They are the nerdiest wizards. The
Uzunjati are historians, and they might also get that.
Someone did ask, and
nerdy.
This is like my goal is to push this. Jason asked, does this make old 2E obsolete? No. I know we said that earlier. I just really want to repeat this for the people in the back, people who just joined. No, 95% or more of your rule books are still valid, are still compatible with what is just coming out. I actually have a video planned for next week, which is 3 reasons to buy the remaster and 3 reasons you don't need to buy the remaster. So
awesome topic. Oh, I missed one. Dr. Waits was wondering a good source for Indigo Isles miniatures.
Yes.
And
you go to battlezoo.com underneath the... there's a link right there. If you go to the additional items, you can buy the miniatures either as STL files and print them out yourself, or you can buy all of them, the 8 resin minis. And they look really good, if I must say so myself.
They're pretty cool.
They're really nice. And I don't know how many we only have. I think we only have like 30, 40 left. And when they're gone, they're gone. I'm not going to make
It's not very many.
No. So, and they're only like $35. And then, look, I also have the Eldamon ones. Woo, look at that. He's so cute.
The Eldamon ones are so cool.
No, these are amazing. Them. These are going out soon. These are great. So Mirtos asked us if they provided advice in the player core on creating new arcane schools. They didn't provide an advice section, but they do tell you everything that needs to be included and provide enough examples that I don't think it would be like... It's not that hard to make one. The main issue is you need an initial and advanced school spell. But if you have an idea for an initial advanced school spell, or you pilfer it from somewhere else and you find ones that kind of fit, then all you have to do is curate a spell list and then write some flavor.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, like at the end of the day, it is 2 spells per level on the curriculum and then 2 focus spells. That is the entirety of that.
That's all you have to do. I mean, which is something, but
sure.
It's not too bad if you're going to make a custom one. That's the kind of thing that could easily fit in like a back matter for an adventure that has a particular wizard school that you meet and be like, we are adding this new school for this wizard school, and that would be a snap.
Yeah.
We have a couple of general questions that I can answer. So your thoughts on why this is priced the same as the 640-page original core. So the 640-page core came out 5 years ago, and pricing and price points for books and hardcovers have changed a huge amount in the last couple of years. Paper has, I think, gone up like 300% in cost since then. Shipping went from $1,000 to $1,500 a container to $6,000 a container.
Inflation.
Everything has just gotten way more expensive.
Yeah. I have a silly answer to that question for that reason. The reason it's priced the same as the 640-page hardcover is because they actually held back on adjusting it to increase with the other books. They said that. And they're only applying some of the increases of cost that happened in time. They held the line on the core. Otherwise, it would have cost more than the 640-page original core rulebook. So the reason it costs the same is because they're actually holding back specifically to make it more of a lost leader so that you'll buy the game.
Yeah, this is almost a lost
so many
leader.
things have gone up in cost.
This is almost
wild.
a lost leader, this book. It's if they're making money on it, it's very little. They're making very little money on this book. So
yeah, I'm sure
even if they are, they lost however much they could have gotten.
Yeah, I'm sure y'all can attest, having made physical copies for your own content, that, trying to sell and ship a physical, nice, hard-binded book for 50 or 60, you're barely making any profit on that.
Especially if some of them turn out to have a problem with them, because then you're going to be shipping another one.
Yep, and that's another loss.
It's estimated you have to replace 5%. That's the number.
Which, think about that if you were thinking of what your margins were going to be, because you then have to replace 5%. And the shipping is now like
shipping's insane.
Shipping
like
very
that's not just 5% more money for printing, but prior to that, like the customer had to pay for shipping, right? But when you replace it, if they're in somewhere that has really expensive shipping, that could wind up making you lose way more than just 5% more of your stock. You could wind up losing as much profit as you would have gained from 10 books if they're in a place with really, really expensive shipping.
Yeah.
And if that happens 5% of the time, they were all in expensive places, you can see that it can go quite bad.
And very finally, and then we'll leave it at that, you can get all the rules for free online, and no one else is doing that. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Sinclair's is doing, is once the almanac is finished, all of the player options there are all going up for free to just coincide with Paizo's design philosophy. You know, that mechanics should be free. Flavor and pre-constructed stuff, that's a luxury, that's a premium.
Yes, and
but just classes, ancestries, archetypes, all of that should be available to anybody who wants it.
Yeah, and we put up dragons and monster parts on PF2 Easy, if I recall. Yeah. You can still find that there.
Oh, the whole monster parts crafting system?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's huge.
A lot of our stuff is OGL. I mean, same thing for the ancestries. And then everything we do works for Path Builder. Everything.
Yep. And we send that out just to everybody. So there are a couple other questions. Quick one from Loremonger. We can answer this right away. On the topic of wizard curricula, is there a universalist curriculum? Yes, it is the School of Unified Magic Theory.
I like how it's done now. I don't know if it's different.
It is the School of Unified Theory. It's not exactly the same, but basically, it's very, very similar.
You basically get one extra slot of every single level, but you don't get any curriculum slots. But in order to access those slots, you need to drain bonded item, which you can do once per spell rank.
Right, which is how Universalists already worked.
And they've still got Hand of the Apprentice, best spell in Pathfinder. I will die on that.
And they have interdisciplinary incantation.
That might be new. I don't remember that one.
That is a different name in any case, but they had something that was similar to that before. No, that is new. So it is, as a reaction when someone casts an arcane spell, it basically lets you spend a focus point to cast the same spell that they cast, but you can't just keep spamming it on your same ally over and over again. It's still, you obviously have to spend the slot, but it's still very powerful if you want to get multiple copies of a buff that you didn't have prepared, but one of your other allies does.
That's tough because it's a focus point and a spell slot. That's tough.
It's all for flexibility, though.
Yeah, it's a big ask because it's using your reaction, it's using your actions, it's using your focus point, and it's using your spell slot. All to copy
but it's
one
only
effect.
using your spell slot if it's something that lasts for a really long time. Because let's say that you just suddenly need to go underwater and you don't have water breathing, and you're not the thesis that can just swap out for water breathing. Because if you are that thesis, you don't really need this focus spell. But you know what? One of the other characters happens to have it, but it's not enough water breathing for everyone, or any other. Say this for any other buff that's long lasting. So you can just reactively do the same buff, then refocus back to the point. And the reaction and the focus point didn't matter, and you still have the buff up.
That's fair. The one thing that is going to cause probably some confusion, and I assume I know how this works, is even if a bard casts a spell that happens to also be on the arcane spell list, because it was cast as an occult spell, you cannot use this.
Yeah, because it says they have to cast an arcane spell.
So even if it's on both lists.
I agree with you.
That's
on
a little awkward
interpretation.
Because that means you're relying either on another wizard, a sorcerer, or a witch who happen to be arcane.
Yeah,
or
it definitely is very situational, because if you're relying on your enemy, then I wouldn't necessarily take that feat.
That's a cool feat that if my player took it and I was the GM, maybe I'd set up some encounters where either an opposing caster used an arcane spell, or they're working with an NPC who does like cast haste or something, and then they can also cast haste in turn.
Right.
That takes a little bit of GM buy-in to make work, unless your party is designed around it.
Fortunately, it's an optional feat, so you can just not take it if you don't want to. Myrto says, what about classes that aren't covered in player core 1 or 2, like Magus? Is that just going to need to be an errata? I assume that it will, because it does have a few spell school things that would need to get errataed.
Yeah, or they're going to do player core 3, but I think that's way.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, that'll be way down. I think they'll let
if they do it, it would be way down. And maybe so far in the future that they just do a quick errata.
Maybe I could see player core 3 having Magus, Summoner, Gunslinger, Inventor, and then Thaumaturge and Psychic. That's 6 classes.
Arguably, most of those don't need very much
right now.
Magus needs a lot because of, I mean, not a lot, but a relatively large amount because of the spell schools. Psychic probably needs a very tiny thing because of the fact that other people can sort of do their focus spell thing with getting extra points. Although, to be honest, it has a ton of stuff and is probably fine. Yeah. And the other 3 that you mentioned, I don't know that they really need to be changed for the remaster, other than using the terminology.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is right now, who knows?
Or I guess like Inventor.
In a year and a half, there might be issues with the classes we haven't even seen yet.
No, you're right. Inventor could probably appreciate a way to do more unstable things in the same way that focus points can do more, but that wouldn't stack with being able to also have 3 focus points on the Inventor and having 6 per encounter powers or something like that you just use constantly and never run out. Could be cool
if unstable deals damage to you, but it doesn't stop you from using more. So you can just keep blowing up in your own face, but your machine's not totally useless.
I think if you did that, you'd have to take out some of the unstable options that
nerf them
that are not good for being spammed. But there's ways around it. There's things that they could do. I'd say Gunslinger, though, not that much changed the remaster, and Summoner definitely not that much changed.
Let's be honest, Gunslinger is a fancy fighter.
They're very fancy. Very fancy.
I am looking forward to seeing what they do with Swashbuckler. I think Swashbuckler has so much potential, especially with the reworked disarm, the addition of reposition. I think they can do some great stuff.
Reposition, Gymnast was already incredibly powerful, and now is even better. Even if they don't do anything else, even if you just play the one from the Advanced Player's Guide, Gymnast is even stronger because, sure, you can't take the feat that I wrote for Gymnast that now is just default in disarm. But you don't have to take it. You can take something else. And you now can roll twice, take the higher when you have Daring Do on your disarm. You get that without spending a feat. And there's some other disarm related options you might be able to multi-class into that will give you a bunch of other possibilities on your Swashbuckler that could be pretty exciting.
Yeah. What was the original question?
I don't know. We got around to that. Let's answer another question from people. I want to do one from Reddit, just because we haven't done any from Reddit yet. So cool. The one, let's see.
You tackle that. I'm going to run to the bathroom.
Specific question that got the most upvotes was how many wizard schools, a lot of people asking about wizards, are in the remaster, and the answer to that is that there are, including the universal school, there's Ars Grammatica, Battle Magic, I'm just going to name them, Boundary, Civic Wizardry, Mentalism, Protean Form, and Unified Magic, so 7, including Unified. And that was pretty fast, so another question was about Electric Arc. Electric Arc now does, as many people predicted, 2d4 at first level instead of 1d4 plus ability mod damage. So that is what Electric Arc does. Then there were a bunch of questions about Sanctified, Holy, and Unholy. So that's one of the OGL changes. I know that it's been discussed, and in fact, there was a preview document that kind of told you a little bit about it in Rage of the Elements. And basically the idea is things that did good or evil damage now do usually spirit damage. Creatures can be sanctified, holy or unholy, which causes them to like take more from effects that are sanctified to the other. So unholy things take more from holy, holy things take more from unholy. And so people in Reddit were wondering, what more is there to this? We've been told clerics can sanctify holy or unholy depending on their deity. But is there like a general feat for me to sanctify unholy? How else can I do that? What about my monk? So I have looked, and I used even a find Control F, and I do not see any way for you to become sanctified right now other than being a cleric. And the description of sanctified says that champions are usually sanctified, often get sanctified as well. Now, there are some items that can deal sanctified damage, like holy water deals damage against unholy sanctified creatures, and holy and unholy weapons deal that sort of more damage to the opposite sanctification. They're 1d4 spirit damage to anyone that goes up to 2d4 against the one that's sanctified the other way. So that's basically it. It's basically everything that they said. There's not like any hidden information. I saw some people being like, well, there's a 3-page gap between page 110 and 113, which are both about holy and unholy. Does that mean that it's a 4-page section? No, it just, they showed up twice in I think the cleric class, which was on those pages, page 110 and 113. They showed up earlier in the cleric class and later in the cleric class. And there's really not a lot to say. It was an elegant way of replacing some of the things that were most popular in some of the alignment mechanics.
Mm-hmm. If it helps to explain it this way, by stretching it as far as I could only talk about holy and unholy for about 3.5 minutes in a video.
Yeah. It's
like
people were thinking there was going to be more, but
it affects your spirit damage.
That's you don't need more. It's good. It's an elegant design. It doesn't need to be a ton of stuff. So it's a 4. So they said that you're going to have to sing now. They're all saying that now. It's just turning into that and spirit damage.
I see 50-50. I see that.
So they said you'd sing.
I was Steve. No, you interrupted. Nope, you interrupted me. That's it. That's all you got.
Oh no, I didn't know you were singing. There's a delay.
Come fly with me. Let's fly away. If you could use some exotic booze, there's a bar in far Bombay. Come fly with me, come fly, let's fly away. Come fly with me, we'll float down to Peru. In Llama Land, there's a one-man band, and he'll toot his flute for you. Come fly with me, we'll take off in the blue. My agent will bill you, Stephen.
Wow, we should have saved that for the bard.
Right? just cut the audio from that part and just play it on stream tomorrow.
That's
There you
pretty
go.
good.
Thank you. I've actually found a local karaoke bar that does karaoke 4 times a week, and I've been going.
Nice.
And
4 times a week? You go 4 times a week?
I go like twice a week, but it's such a
Oh
blast.
my god, that's
I
still
love it.
2 times more a week than I go. Oh my god.
We actually have 300 likes now.
That means it's Steven's turn.
No, I don't sing.
Do I have to do the elder
Come
rap?
on, Chad. Come on,
We
Chad.
could lose the entire chat from how bad it is.
I don't think people know what the elder rap is, but
I remember the elder rap.
There you go. And Owen Burke asked any melee replacement spell for Shocking Grasp. So in that sense, I believe that I looked through the first level spells that were not cantrips, or first rank. Got to get used to that. First rank arcane spells, and I did not see a first rank arcane spell that looked like it was just
melee.
I am replacing this in that I am a melee attack spell that uses an attack roll. However, as has already been stated in the Rage of Elements preview, Thunderstrike is an electric first level spell.
Yeah, I guess the problem there is that Shocking Grasp was purely somatic, right? It didn't trigger reactive strikes from a manipulate action.
Shocking Grasp?
Yeah.
If it was somatic, it would trigger.
Sorry, verbal is what I meant.
But let's see if it was purely verbal or not. It was not. It was somatic and verbal.
Oh. Yeah, so I guess if you want to flavor Thunderstrike, if you happen to be in melee, you can conjure it in melee.
But
it's
if they're a magus and they're trying to spell strike with it, they need more than flavor.
Also, is Thunderstrike a spell attack roll or no?
It is not.
Save. No,
it is a saving throw.
That's fair. Yeah, that is weird that they would remove that from magus effectively. For a wizard, it's just about the same. It's better.
It's much better usually for a wizard because of the fact that it does something on a successful save and it's got a good range and its scaling is really, really cracked. So it's much better for a wizard, but Magus is a little unhappy.
Yeah, Magus, they have what? Telekinetic projectile. They have produce. Is it not called produce flame anymore?
It's ignite now. But they've got a bunch of cantrips. They can always multi-class into psychic for some ridiculous damage. There's a lot of options on them.
But yeah, that's just weird that first level, if you're going just off of core spells here, Magus does not have much.
So someone asked about Gouging Claw. It's basically going to do slashing or piercing damage, your choice, and it does a good amount of persistent bleed damage. So that's what makes it better than Ignite if you're willing to commit entirely to being in melee, because Ignite you can choose. It does 2d6 and scales with d6. So that makes it a solid choice for the bleed damage, which happens on a regular hit as well if you are willing to commit to melee. And Telekinetic Projectile is similar, but you can choose from all 3 damage types, 2d6 damage, and it does not do the bleed damage, but it has a 30-foot range. So those are kind of where things are at. And as people in the chat point out, they aren't deleting the old spells, so you could use Shocking Grasp there anyway. There's a question about oracles and divine witches and sorcerers can't be sanctified right now without taking cleric dedication or something. At the moment, as far as I can tell, and I saw this question in Reddit in advance, so I actually searched both documents, and I do not see an option that allows you or forces you to take sanctification other than in cleric, and there's implications that champion will have it too, because the sidebar is like many of a deity's most devout servitors, including champions and clerics, can become sanctified.
Yeah.
So that is, I did my research in advance for questions just like that one. So that's my answer to you, Velis Verity.
Random question that I just had. This applies both the original and the remaster. Can a magus spell strike if they multi-class wizard with Hand of the Apprentice?
Is it a spell attack roll?
It is, but it's worded weird. It's you hurl a held melee weapon with which you are trained at the target, making a spell attack roll.
So it's a little weird because I feel like
it's not like a a spell. You're
the
like,
GM's gonna have to adjudicate that one.
Yeah,
I would say that like maybe, but then it also gets hurled because that's part of the spell's effect.
Right, but then,
so even if you're right next to them, I guess it like flies out of your hands during the part of that's the spell, because part of the spell's effect is that it flies, but it does fly back to you, right?
Yeah, it does.
So it doesn't really matter.
The crazy thing, though, is that, again, the damage of Hand of the Apprentice is your weapon damage. So if you've got like a striking, flaming great axe on your Magus and you spell strike Hand of the Apprentice, if you critically hit, that's quadruple weapon damage.
Oh, sure. But the reason why, if you're going to spend a focus point anyway and take another class, Imaginary Weapon is more powerful because it's more than your weapon damage. It goes up to like 90.
I don't actually know that one.
It's from Psychic. It goes up to like 90 or some like very, very high amount.
Okay, scales with your level. And it's a cantrip. Gotcha.
It's a cantrip, but when you use the focus point on it, it goes up to like 90.
Oh.
And that's even more than your weapon's damage.
Wow. Yeah,
so,
that's going to be way faster.
Your weapon's damage is very good. Don't get me wrong. And since it may strike with your weapon twice, I guess, at that point. Or no, it just does your weapon damage. It's not a strike. So it may not apply to some other weird things that are on it. But yeah, it's not quite 90. I guess it's people are pointing out in chat, it's 4.5 less. So it's 85.5. But it's up there.
They make a good point that you'd actually have to wizard multi-class Magus because you can't get Hand of the Apprentice by multi-classing wizard.
Oh, well, there you go.
I guess dual class, but yeah.
There's a lot of possibilities. So let's see. I saw some questions that were...
Real quick, while you look for the questions. So,
yes,
for those of you who are late to the party, we are going through Player Core right now and Remaster in general. If you have any questions and want them answered by us, you can type them in there, but we'll probably, if we find them, we'll do them. But a lot of questions are being asked. If not, do a super chat. We'll always answer the super chats, so you can get your questions in there. Otherwise, we're trying as much as we can. If not, there are 500-600 people in here, so they will answer the questions too. That's why people are writing questions, and so even if we don't get to them, someone might. And then here is the schedule for the next 2 weeks, where we'll be going over specific classes in detail. And who do we have joining us tomorrow for Bard, by the way?
I believe we have Grady Wang from Gallant Goblin, who also wrote the Baku ancestry for World of Battle Zoo Indigo Isles.
Yes, Grady. And he wrote nearly all the sidebars.
Nearly all the sidebars in Battle Zoo Best, Strange, and Unusual. They are so good sidebars.
Really good
Grady
sidebars.
is a great author. He also wrote a lot of the lore in... along with Paul Hughes in World of Battle Zoo Indigo Isles, the extra lore from there.
So... And then also do check out the Year of Monsters Kickstarter, Year of Legends, the Year of whatever. We're just doing them. There are lots of cool things. You want to be a were-crocodile? Now you can. You want to be a swarm of piranha? Maybe. That's right. You can be a swarm of piranha.
We hope so.
We hope so. Oh, we got a question.
We have a lot of questions, but we must do the super chats first.
I'm trying to find the answer to that one about Final Sacrifice.
Has Final Sacrifice been changed?
I don't think it's called Final Sacrifice anymore. Either that or it's not in the book.
It might not be. Synesthesia is out of the book. Let's talk about the fact some things that were in the Advanced Player's Guide or the core rule book that were not OGL are just not there. So Synesthesia is not there. My guess, though, is it was not done for power reasons, but they probably removed it because it's a real world condition. Wall of Stone is exactly the same as it was before. Talking about some of, I'll talk about Wall of Stone and Slow as some of like my power level failures that I accidentally put in things that were overpowered into PF2 when I was doing it. It's, you know what? Everybody does it. I'll always talk about it. When a book comes out, there's going to be a few things that are a little bit too strong that you may need to do something with, even the best books. And that is a couple of things I put in that were too strong. And they still are. They're exactly the same as they were before. Synesthesia is not there at all. And it looks like Final Sacrifice isn't either. So if it's in the game, it had its name changed.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. So it was a first rank.
It used to be a second rank spell.
Oh, that's right. It was like because it was one level before.
It was basically Fireball, but one level lower, and it killed a minion. And I see no reason why they would have just changed the name of it. And also, I just looked through the arcane second rank spells. And it's not there.
I'm not seeing them. Yeah, I think it might have just been utilized too much. I'm not sure, because I've seen entire encounters at like character level 3 just completely trivialized by that spell, because you summon a broom, the broom walks in, the goblin camp has no idea why there's a walking broom, and it blows up and kills every goblin in one shot. It was cool. Like, don't get me wrong, it was hype when it happened, but I feel like if it became the norm, it might be too strong to be in the core book.
So, by the way, Clark Connor asked how the bard's been changed. We'll go over that tomorrow.
Yeah, we're going to do a deep dive with Grady of the whole bard. We're not going to literally show every page of the bard, but we will show the feat table that shows all the feats. We'll show the character progression table, and we will discuss what's the same, what's renamed, and what's new in the bard tomorrow at 3 Eastern.
Oh, let me tell you,
today we're talking about other stuff.
That's something I'm so worried about, and it's going to happen in my full long-form deep dives, is I'm going to see a renamed feat and be like, whoa, look at this new feat they added that didn't exist before. And then I'm going to get 300 comments saying, no, that existed. It's just called something different now. Because I do not have like an eidetic memory. I don't remember everything of every class. So there were like 4 different fighter feats that I thought were brand new, but they were just renamed because they added like reposition and the disarm synergy.
There you go. Well, I have an unfair advantage of having written the bard class, so I probably will remember what. Yeah, I mean, I didn't write all the APG feats, but I did do a design pass on them, so I probably will remember what wasn't in there, and maybe I won't. So you can all comment, see if you stump me with that tomorrow. So there were questions a few times in chat and Reddit about recall knowledge. Huh? So basically, the idea of recall knowledge is that it's pretty similar to what it said before, except for that it now is based on asking the GM questions about the creatures, which it gives a lot more guidance, which is good. One of the things that is not necessarily good about asking the GM questions about the creatures is that it encourages metagaming, in the sense that if you know, if you have a player who knows all of the monsters and they just suspiciously ask about, but they don't play the creature's weaknesses until they recall knowledge. But they recall knowledge, they're like, I'm going to ask about this creature's special weaknesses. And the GM's like, but you always asked about its special attacks before. You're like, well, no, this time I'm asking about weaknesses, because they know it doesn't have a special attack, but it has a special weakness. They're at a big edge over a newbie. But even if you have that issue and you want to help out newbies, this guidance is still good, because you can be like, hey, newbies, you technically get a question, but listen, I'm your GM and I'm your friend. Let me pick the question.
Yeah.
I now see what the list is. I'll pick the one that's best for you. Okay. I like, that's what I would probably do, is be like, I know what's best for you, so you should take it. If you don't want it, I'll let you pick. Or if it's equal, I'll be like, there's a lot of good things on this. You just pick whatever you want to pick.
I love the way my GM does it, which he offers. Okay, you succeeded. You can now learn a resistance, weakness, or immunity, highest save, lowest save, not the value, just which one is highest.
Yep.
Or one special ability. Oh, and if you crit succeed, you get to ask 2 of those.
And that's on there now. That's what your GM is doing is in there. That's the thing. It says what its lowest save is, but not the value, and weaknesses. All those kind of things are an option. So I think that this is wonderful to have in the guidance for recall knowledge, because even if you have a GM who is more of a like, listen, I can get you something that you would need, and the new player wouldn't know what to ask, as much as the person who just knows the monster, this list is still fantastic, because it gives the GM a sense of how much they can say.
Oh, and I like it gives you more questions than just creatures. Like it says, if you're asking about sites, what's the general location? What's the government there? What kind of monsters are there? Magic, how can it be avoided? That's such a cool question to ask, recalling knowledge on a magical effect.
Yeah.
That's all.
So people in chat are like, APG spells might be in player core 2, but honestly, player core 1 seems like it mostly has core rulebook and APG spells. Maybe they're saving some for player core 2. I'm not sure. Maybe that's the answer, is that they were just like, this will have all the core rulebook things plus some of the APG ones, and then the second one will have the other APG ones. That's a good point. Some of the ancestries are clearly from in player core 2, and some of the classes are. So that easily could have been the answer to that question. Now we had a super chat that said, "Speaking of Wall of Stone, can you make a box?" Is from King Fate 20. Well, it depends on what your GM will let you do. That's one of the reasons why I said that I messed up when I wrote it and should have clarified a bit more, right, in the text. And I was kind of expecting there might be, but there weren't. If I was your GM, and listen, this is not in the spell. It doesn't say anything. So your GM has to decide. Then I would at least say that you can't do that thing where you just kind of swizzle it around and create like infinitely many thick boxes where you have to cut down multiple stages of the wall and they're just completely boxed in. And also that creatures that are gargantuan, instead of destroying a 10 by 10 pane, should be able to destroy a 15 by 15 pane so that they can fit through it. And because right now they can't. You can fit through one size smaller as difficult terrain. That's part of the rules. But right now a gargantuan creature has to destroy, I think, because of weird parity, may have to destroy 4 10 by 10 panes, just barely, because there's just a little bit that there may be a way to do it with 3, but in any case, it takes a ridiculous number of attacks for them, and it should just be they're kind of big, so they can destroy. When they destroy it, it's big enough for them to get through. Once they interact with your thing, spend tons of actions on smacking into it. But those are both not in the spell, King Fate 20, so it's going to be up to your group to decide what it is.
Even Pathfinder doesn't have the answer to every mechanical possible question.
But maybe it should have, and that's kind of my fault. Sorry, everybody.
But here's the thing, though, is if you tried to add every single caveat and every single answer to every single niche question to every single effect, that book would be way too big.
No, you're right. You're right. But there's not that many of them that were still causing big issues. And the remaster fixed many of what those were. And I'm very, very happy about that. The remaster is great and tour de force with very little time, as we mentioned, to do it, as we mentioned earlier in the stream. So someone's asking about the remastered Battle Muse. We'll be talking about the Bard next time, but I kind of said earlier in this live stream as an example of the person who didn't want to update what that is, which is once per composite per new Inspired Courage or new Inspired Defense composition, you can smack an enemy and extend its duration by a round.
By the way, we have
which is pretty cool.
A lot of people asking about if there's new archetypes, and the only archetypes I see are just for the classes, and that's it.
Yeah, it's just multi-classing.
Yeah, which is fair. I think archetypes are an advanced player concept.
They're going to be in Player Core 2. I'm sure that's just like Advanced Player's Guide. Huge amounts of the page counts was the archetypes. I think you're going to see all pretty much the APG archetypes in Player Core 2. Maybe some pickups from other places. Especially ones like Wrestler that were supposed to be in the APG but got kicked out of the APG by 16 page count parodies and the classes going over and stuff. I think Evil Champions and Oracles were both over by 2 pages, so we lost Wrestler and Captivator.
Oh.
And by the way, there's another question that came up fair. How does the mixed ancestry work if you're making a custom one? There's only one paragraph that really explains, quote, the rules. Basically, you have to work with your GM to create it. You sort of have to decide, which is the peanut butter and which is the chocolate and who gets what. But
so, the basic rule is you pick one as your base ancestry. The heritage's effect is you gain access to that ancestry's feats. You don't gain the special effects. You don't gain the dark vision from whatever. You don't gain this or that. You just get access to their feats. Which is cool because this means a mixed ancestry doesn't even necessarily mean you are genetically that one. You don't gain their trait, I don't think. So you could be, a human who was just raised by dwarves. So you can just take some of the feats that make you more dwarf-like in that you grew up surrounded by stone, maybe at one with the stone, but you're not genetically a dwarf. Or you could be. I think it's flexible like that.
Yeah, they there's a lot of leeway for this. The actual hard rules are very short, and then after that, it's really just guidelines. I presume there'll be a lot of people putting up. This is actually why I like this so much, is because I can see many Reddit threads in the future of pretty cool mixed ancestries that people can put together.
And I can see art. It's going to look awesome.
And I can see unique feats specifically for specific mixed ancestries. You know,
that sounds like a Pathfinder Infinite product to me because it's too specific, probably for Paizo to publish them because it uses so many pages for something that is like, well, if there's 50 ancestries, then there's 2,500 combinations. If each of them had one feat, then that is too many. But it would be some like doing the cross product of, or it's not really a cross product, but multiplying out the two ancestries and doing one feat for every two ancestry combination in Pathfinder sounds like a Pathfinder Infinite project idea.
Right? Just do it book by book, like just with the core rulebook we have here, that's a lot of combinations.
Yes. Even with that, it's a lot. And if you add all the ancestries, it's an obscene amount. And you're just like, yes, this 1,000-page product it wouldn't really be that long because it doesn't take that much space to write a feat. But the length of the original core rulebook product, which is all feats for mixed ancestry combinations.
It'd be cool.
So a lot of people ask questions about whether things changed that didn't change. Like someone asked if Fascinated changed, and it looks the same to me.
Let's see. I feel like I remember hearing Fascinated actually got buffed, but I could be wrong.
By the way, there is also, I forgot, there's the new pet feat.
Which lets you get basically kind of a familiar with no familiar abilities.
Wait, no, you're kidding me. Is that a general feat?
Yes. Page 259.
Technically, Sinclair's did it first. We released ours.
Someone asked the question: How does that affect Sinclair's? Because now
I think they're going to be the same feat. I mean, I don't think Paizo will reach out to us and say, "Hey, even though you posted yours first, get rid of it." They'll probably just ignore it.
Yeah, that they would never.
No, they can't.
They not only would never do that, but they can't.
They can't.
Right.
So jail.
Even if you post yours afterwards, if it's not plagiarized, then they can't.
I'm curious. Did Paizo make theirs?
Actually.
Is theirs? Oh, theirs is really long. Interesting. I'm actually curious now.
It's long. It actually. It does.
Is it just called? Okay, the pet general feat. Let's see. Because ours
just checked Fascinated against Fascinated. I think it's exactly the same.
Okay. Okay. Pet. A tiny animal type you
quite
choose.
Cool. I actually like that.
The minion trait. Okay, levels equal to yours compared to our. So the way Sinclair's did it is. Ours. We just said you gain a familiar, but it doesn't gain any familiar or master abilities except those related to its form, which cannot be changed. So it's a familiar with no abilities. The pet feat on ours.
Whereas this is kind of similar to that, but it's not exactly the same.
Are the modifiers done differently than a familiar's modifiers? 3 level?
I will have to check the current familiar roll.
Yeah, which if we don't have,
but it's very, very, very close to being a familiar that has essentially no familiar abilities except for. Oh, it looks like it has movement speeds for being the pet, but it doesn't have any of the things that are beyond that.
So much.
The other one that was changed a lot was additional lore.
Really?
It's because now you automatically. I don't know if it did it already.
Wait, it did that before. I looked at it and I was like, "This is the same."
Is it the same?
Because I heard
people said it didn't automatically go up.
Oh, no, it does. For all the ancestry lore, feats.
Oh, the ancestry lore feats go up.
Yes.
Wow, they were. That's different than additional lore.
Sorry,
I didn't even notice that when I was looking through them. But that makes them
really good.
Oh, no, they only do that with the lore feats. They give additional lore. I thought Stephen was saying that they scale up crafting and religion for dwarf. So they give additional lore in dwarf lore. So
you will automatically become a legendary in your lore at level 15.
They essentially give you 2 trainings and additional lore, which is significantly more powerful than they were before, but I think that's cool.
Yeah, this is an ancestry feat that gives you 2 trained proficiencies and 4 free. It technically gives you 6 free skill
yes, although the game generally considers trained in a non-lore to be about balanced with additional lore. So it essentially gives you what is equivalent to 3 trained, whereas before it gave you 2 plus a ribbon of trained in a lore.
Right.
Because the baseline had been 2 skills of your choice for human.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, there was ideas of let's do one for the ancestries to give their skills. I was like, but we need to give them something else because humans can just pick whatever they want. And so getting trained in lore was enough that people said that wasn't too much. But I think it's really awesome to get all 4 ranks in that lore. That's very cool.
That's really cool. Yeah, you know your people just automatically. That's cool.
Yeah.
So I messed it up.
That's a really great
figured
option.
out what I was saying.
Yeah, we figured out what you were saying. We got it.
You got it.
We're on to you, Stephen. We realized what it was. It was you made a very, very good point.
No, I actually like that because in my games, people take that sort of stuff all the time. It's
I've seen people take the X ancestry lore feat a lot anyway, and so now they're going to have even better lores.
Especially if you have, I do very long campaigns. I go from, we're doing 1 to 20s. It's short campaigns, who knows? But in long campaigns, those come up a lot. Like, lore comes up a huge amount, especially if you're doing a adventure path. So it can come. It's good, especially since Paizo does so many adventure paths, and lore really is a big piece of that. That it is not one of those, who would ever take that feat? It's like, trust me, people will take it because if you want story, you want that feat.
And lore, just lore feats are so fun to try to figure out how you can use them. The lore is so obscure sometimes that you can get really creative with the skill checks you can apply it to.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
like the lore.
So, what was
someone did ask
people were just asking?
Can I answer one question about Sinclair's that someone asked real quick?
Sure.
If you White Wolves, you can get your Sinclair's Almanac on the website right now. If you backed it on Kickstarter, you can get it off of BackerKit. If you pre-ordered it on the website, you can download the PDF off the website right now. Thank you.
So now we're getting to the backlog questions. So
ancestry weapon feats and the general feats for weapons and armor both give you expert at caster time, which means that if you're a caster, you would be hard pressed not to always go for. If you're actually fighting as a caster, you might as well, especially if you're one of the new caster classes that got all martial weapons, just get an advanced weapon. Whereas if you're a martial, you still don't want to do it because it only gives you expert at level 11. And similarly, you might as well go for as good of an armor as you can as a caster. At this point, it puts a lot of more breathing room for some of the lower dexterity casters.
But I like that because general feats at low levels were already so easy. It was usually fleet or improved initiative or one other one. And that was it. So now trying to choose between, 5-foot movement speed or, a net +1 armor class, which is more important to you.
So once again, I see
there's a question quickly about whether days changed, and then I want to do the super chat from Thunder's Hound. It did. It now does a D6, so it is nerfed by a half of a point of damage if you are a regular spellcaster, or buffed by a half from levels 1 to 4 if you are someone who does not have your key stat as your spellcasting stat, like a magus, I guess. And other than that, it's worse at higher levels, and it looks like it's otherwise exactly the same. So Alcaret and Thunder's Hound had questions about classes. Alcaret, Thunder's Hound said, "What druid orders are there? Do we have the ones from Secrets of Magic?" I think this is mostly an APG plus core rulebook.
One of them got renamed.
Stuff. So I think it's got animal, leaf, storm. And it has Untamed instead of Wild.
Wild, yeah.
Because it's not Wild Shift now, it's Untamed Shift, because Wild Shift is a D&D name.
And also, people who came late, these are the upcoming streams where we will go through each class over the next 2 weeks. So do like and subscribe.
There's also a question about the witch archetype. So the witch archetype used to be, until the psychic archetype did this even more so, just the most powerful spellcasting archetype in the game, and now psychic was obviously better because it gave you a focus point at first level. Let's see. Now it looks like maybe even more powerful than it was before. Yeah, it looks like it's even more powerful than it was before, but I didn't do a full analysis of what everybody else got. Let me see.
It doesn't look like you get a hex. You don't get the hex. You just get a familiar.
Yeah, sure, but you get now 2 cantrips, whereas Wizard gets 2 cantrips and nothing else.
But you can only prepare 1 per day.
Oh yeah, you prepare 1. So it's the same as it was before. Yeah. It's 2 and you prepare 1 instead of 4 and prepare 2. So it is Oh wait, but it gives you all of the familiar abilities, which it used to.
No,
it used to give you
a normal number of familiar.
Yes, abilities. It gives you all of a normal familiar's abilities
normal, yes.
too, instead of getting one like you did before.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it basically gives you all of the familiar master archetype, or basically what would be a second level class feat for anybody else to take, and half of the other dedication as well. Okay. So it's just better than other spellcasting dedications. In terms of getting the focus spell,
I don't think you can.
You don't because it's not in basic witch spellcasting.
You can get
it looks like it's not in basic witchcraft.
Yeah,
and there's not a bespoke feat to gain it. So that's a unique. Some of those patron benefits are unique benefits to the single classed witch,
which I think is good. That's like the hexes now more than ever are the witch's identity. That is what makes them different from a wizard. And if you could just multi-class into that, it'd take a little bit of the agency away from the witch itself.
And people are asking if Leaf Order is doing something really different now because it used to have Goodberry, and now it's Cornucopia, which is, as you might expect, pretty similar to Goodberry, but it's not Goodberry. It is legally distinct. It's Cornucopia.
It also
fruit, nut, or similar bit of produce.
It also at level 6 has a feat that gives them permanent bark skin, or as it's known now, oaken resilience.
Yeah,
permanent,
which is like
at will.
It is a very low level feat to get permanent of a buff. Like if you compare it to other things that give a permanent buff.
Yeah. So real quick, while we're talking about this, we're not going to probably talk about the new ancestries, because we're going to do classes. So we have Leshy and Orc. Aren't those new completely, or added?
They're from other books.
No,
so
but
Leshy,
but now part of core is what I meant.
Yes, they've been pulled to core. Orc has been pulled from Advanced Player's Guide due to Orc joining to fight the Whispering Tyrant Tarbafon, and Leshy's have been pulled from Lost Omens Character Guide when Linda Zeiss Palmer wrote them in Character Guide and then expanded them in Ancestry Guide, and now they're in the core. Woo!
That's actually a big deal because, you know, like these will be the ancestries that people will most likely choose. You know, if they're only going to get one book or they're going to be starting the game, they're probably not going to go for something crazy as their first or second character. So it's nice to see Leshy in there and Orc.
Well, it's nice to see such an out there ancestry. You know, Leshy, I think, is one of the big ones that sets Pathfinder apart from a lot of similar games because you're just playing as a plant person. You know, you're basically playing almost an elemental in some cases, like a wood elemental. Not quite as far as like a Kenrasu, but
Leshy has gone a far,
Leshy's
far
very
away.
popular. People like them. They're a cute plant creature. They have definitely is one of the examples that I have of like there was a big pilot discussion about what ancestries to add in the Lost Omens Character Guide, and Iruxi, Lizard Folk, and Hobgoblins were like almost a sure thing. But for the third one, I was the only person on the design team who was in that meeting. It had a lot of other people, but design team was very busy, and I was the design lead. So I came in from the design team suggestion of Leshy, which was obviously immediately seconded by a bunch of other people who were at the meeting. The highest ranking people who were at that meeting were like, you know, we don't really like Leshies, but they heard that so many. But this is a good thing about Paizo because they didn't just kibosh it because they didn't like them. They were like, you know what, though? They all said, look around this room, and everybody else, except for the three of us, is so enthusiastic. There was one other person who wasn't, and he'll be like, Mark, I also wasn't. I'm in favor of Leshies. But it was like, there were like 16 people in the room. It's like, there's so many people who are in favor of it that it's just clear that there are different things for different people. And this is something that we should do. And I appreciate that about leadership decisions at Paizo sometimes. That's because great. I thought that was a crystallized example of an excellent meeting where people were willing to listen to each other's perspectives and make a decision based on thinking about other people and not just our own preferences.
Well, all I remember is I was at PaizoCon, maybe it was like 2017 or so. It was like it was like around there. And people were super excited because there was an adventure where you could play Leshy.
Yeah. Linda and Eleanor Farron wrote that adventure, Fistful of Flowers. And Linda wrote a few flowers more.
And well, this was for Paizo. This was maybe it was for I don't know if the name of it, but
Fistful of Flowers was the all
it was
Leshy
Pathfinder first edition. Yeah,
second edition adventure. The one was all Leshies.
Right. Well, this one I meant was first edition, and this was actually at PaizoCon.
Oh, you mean when Linda also wrote the Vine Leshy race in Book of the it was Ultimate Wilderness.
Something. Well, you're right, and people were super excited,
and then it became available to everyone, and they were like, "Yes."
So it went from this seed of an idea then grew into the community,
I see what you
and
did there.
now has sprouted into the player core.
I really love that about Pathfinder. That's something that I like to try to push to people. Is it goes so far beyond your fantasy staples. It's still got your humans and elves and dwarves, but it's so much more than that. And it's funny to me that to this day on some of my videos, I still get comments from people on like my goblin video where they're like, ugh, I can't believe goblins are a playable ancestry. They're just monsters. And I'm like, why do you care so much?
Well, then they probably wouldn't like the Year Monsters because you can play a freaking ooze, you can play a mimic, you can play a slime, you name it, man. We got it all in there.
These people stuck in like the AD&D games where it's like it's fine to like those worlds, where your basic humanoids are the players. Like that's fine. But why do you care so much if other people play as a plant person or a small little squirrely goblin?
Yeah, you never know.
I mean, they just might not want it to be in their game. They might be playing alongside it, and they're just like, I don't want to have that here with me. I don't know. I have a lot of fun playing with all of Linda's Leshies that she plays. She writes them and then she plays them. She is both the consumer and the producer.
They're stuck in a world where elves and dwarves are classes. True.
So here's a funny and true anecdote, though spun a little bit amusingly just for fun. When Leshies were first released as a boon in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, costing achievement points for the organized play, which Linda was the development manager who was in charge of all the organized play teams, there was a glitch. But we can just say Linda secretly hacked the Paizo site that gave all of the achievement points earned by worldwide to her, instead of to anybody else. And so the only person who could buy Leshies was Linda because she had like the entire world's store of points that were earned by playing games that the site had been applying to her.
You have to ask her for
she was
permission
forced to relinquish the points back to the people who had actually earned them. But she didn't do it. It was just like it glitched to like a very small number, and her number, I guess, number 8, and she's number 8. Most people's number is like 35,000 something, and it was hilarious because it was right when you could buy Leshies, and so everyone was memeing of like Linda's just going to use all of our points to buy like 1,000 Leshy characters.
So now is the time if you have any more questions. There was a lot of questions I saw way earlier, but there's way too many chats for me to scroll all the way back up. So if we didn't answer your question, either quickly throw it in here now or do a super chat and we will get to it.
Let's see. Someone asked if fighters get a subclass.
No.
They don't. And they asked if monks do. We don't know because monks are not in.
Monks are not
yes. My guess is that monks are not going to be changed that much because they honestly were one of the best incarnations of the monk of all time, and we're really doing what they were trying to be doing. But we'll see. That is pure speculation.
But yeah, no, I will always fight. I've said this since day one. The fighter's subclass is their weapon of choice. That is your subclass.
Your weapons. Weapon group?
Yeah. Great weapons, single weapons, ranged weapons, you name it. You'll take the feats that augment it, which basically it's a build your own subclass. That's what I love about fighter and monk. You build your own subclass.
I'm actually going to answer some questions real quick, and then we'll go to Super Chat. Guitar Guy Nick asked if any of the apps will get an errata. I don't know what you mean by apps. I kind of said this earlier, if you people missed, is that Archives of Nethys is going to release the remaster, but supposedly as its own subsection, so you'll be able to use both Pathfinder First Edition rules and Second and Remaster if you really wanted to. I know Foundry is updating to Remaster because they just have to, and I presume like Roll20 and others will as well, because just how software works, it's hard to keep two versions of the same code, especially if it's not a real new master. It's not if it's a new version, if it's kind of a remaster. So I imagine it's going to be like that. I don't know what apps you're talking about. And then there was another question. Well, we'll talk about that. Oh, Adventure Path, Path Builder 2. Path Builder 2, I presume, is going to have to. I don't know. I'd actually have to ask the programmer. What's his name? Dave. And then for the Adventure Paths, I don't know as well. We actually don't know how they're working. I presume nothing that has been published before will get anything official because it's too much work. And things like Adventure Paths will probably be fixed if they're breaking. This actually happened in Jewel of the Indigo Isle. We had, what was it, Mark? We had one of ours break, and we had to fix it because of remaster.
Oh, yeah. Something that just like a small change cascaded.
It was like Unholy.
I can't remember.
It was good to Unholy or something. We had to change.
Yeah, it was something like that, but then it made the damage, instead of replacing it, just made the damage type disappear, so there was no listed damage type.
Or is adding, or instead of taking hit points off, it was adding hit points. So whatever, we fixed it. So I imagine little things like that, but otherwise.
Also,
you can do the super chats now.
So there's some super chats. So first, did they change multi-class 1/2 level feat? No, it's still at 1/2 level, which is really honestly a good thing because some of those high level feats were not intended to go outside of the class. Mm-hmm. There's one asking, do ruffian rogues use unarmed attacks? They do not. However, thieves do, which means that if monk doesn't change, that the one true build for like a thief rogue is going to be some of those D8 agile finesse monk unarmed attacks, and you can sneak in with your rogue too. No one will be able to take your weapons, which is interesting. And someone also asked about Eldritch Trickster, and asking how it was changed. It's not in there.
So, it might be in Player Core 2.
It might be in Player Core 2, but it's not in there, so we do not know. It could have been removed. It could have been saved for Player Core 2. Mirtos asked, there's a feeling that some archetypes are great and some are very weak. Is there going to be making some of the weaker ones stronger? Well, we don't know, because the only archetypes that are in here are the multi-class archetypes.
We have gotten confirmation that some archetypes are getting facelifts, like the Snare Crafter. So I will be excited to see how some of the archetypes are changed. And I would assume, this is just me, obviously I don't speak for Paizo, if any archetypes that were in, say, the APG do not show up in Player Core 2, I would assume that means that the old APG versions are still canon, are still lore, you can play them. You know, if they don't update the Archaeologist and it doesn't show up in Player Core 2,
right,
I would assume Archaeologist just functions the exact same way it does.
And the only reason Snarecrafter is being changed is because they're just literally redoing snares. And clearly, like, they didn't want to do that now. They want to give themselves more time. So Ranger just does not have them at all. Mm-hmm. And Snarecrafter is going to have the new version. Because Snarecrafter was honestly already as good at doing snares as Ranger, the class that had it, whereas most archetypes were not as good as the main class that they took it from, as good or better. So it makes sense. Just make Snarecrafter the one-stop shop for it. Anybody can take it and redo the rules in there. It's smart to save it for a later book. But I think that is the exception that proves the rule that they may not necessarily be doing massive seismic shifts to the other ones, because that's one where they wanted to change the whole snare rules. So, of course, now that archetype is the one place where it lives, that's where the changes are going to be.
I really hope they weaken snares, but make them more usable mid-combat.
That could be a good idea, because they do have actually obscenely high damage in DC for their level. If you get one at the top level and then an enemy actually goes onto it.
Well, see, I want to play like a fighter snare crafter with the new reposition action. You know, if you can put a snare down next to you and then succeed your athletics.
I think you can't reposition them into a dangerous spot because of the force movement rules.
Isn't that only for controlled force movement, not for physical? Because you can shove.
I believe that is what the force movement rules say. However, I did not see
you can put them anywhere.
Yeah, and it functions the same as shove. The hazardous thing is only, I believe, for like you can't convince or charm someone to walk into a snare.
Did that change in the remaster? Let me see.
You can shove someone off a cliff. That's always been canon.
Lord knows, I know this happened.
You can usually only shove them off, though.
Right, reposition is the same wording as shove. They just have to stay within your reach.
No, but shove specifically, it said that shove could do it because of the fact that it goes directly away from you. Mm-hmm. It says if you're pushed or pulled, aka shove, you can usually be moved through hazardous terrain or pushed off a ledge in the leg. Abilities that reposition you in some other way can't put you in such dangerous places unless they specify otherwise. In all cases, the GM makes the final call if there's doubts. So yeah, it can't. By the forced movement rules, I knew what they were in PF2 normal because I worked on it. I needed to check to see if Remaster changed them. It did not. So shove works because it is a push. It is directly a push, but reposition does not.
I saw one interesting question because I wasn't aware of this. I did not look at the weapons that closely, but someone said that some of the weapons were changed or nerfed.
I think the weapons specialization effects.
Yeah.
Yes. The ones that trip you automatically with no save, rightfully got the saving throw added to them. As the person who created the weapon specialization effects initially, they needed to have a save.
Yes, because I myself,
they needed to have a save. They definitely did. That was even something that was like pretty clear, even in some ways coming up the play test, but it was just like on the borderline where it was like, some of these need to have a save, such as the stun, slow, and the trip. And we had done internal playtests extensively with the stun, slow. And so a lot of people were just like, you're right. When I brought that in, the stun, slow is really disruptive. We have to do that, but not the trip. And I was like, well, we could put it on all of them, but the trip did not get them. And I'm very happy to see that the trip has it now too, because it's super disruptive.
People are asking me like, oh, do you do any house rules? That was not a house rule. That was, you automatically trip. And I'd be like, what? And I remember talking about this, Mark. I'm like, that's way too powerful. And I even wrote Paizo.
I think I told you then. Yeah. That's a kind of a house rule that our group does.
Yeah, so. I said that's incorrect, which now they fixed. And on my games, they're like, it doesn't say. He says it trips. I'm like, well, I spoke to Park himself. And in our game, you got to roll because that is OP, man. It's like an automatic trip is way too powerful for a critical specialization effect. And thank you. It has been changed because that was way too much. Anyhow.
That's why the knockdown feat is so damn good on fighters.
So someone said they really wish Ruffian could use unarmed attacks. Why is a thief better wrestler than muscle rogue? I mean, they already can use sneak attacks on regular unarmed attacks because everybody can. The contention was that thief rogue can now use their thief special ability on unarmed attacks, which they previously couldn't, to stop you from getting some weird super powered unarmed attack from another class. And Ruffian doesn't have anything special that was... They don't need to specifically say they work on unarmed attacks because all of their stuff worked on unarmed attacks anyway.
Actually, the question was, did Axe critical specialization change?
Did Axe critical special? Let me see.
The original one stunk. I
didn't notice. I mean, the first Axe critical specialization is actually very strong depending on the enemy's positioning. Mm-hmm. It can do some of the most damage to large groups of enemies. It's obviously not the best critical specialization out there because obviously tripping for free was the best by a lot.
Not in my games.
But it's actually... I had an Axe fighter in a game that I ran from 1 to 20, and because it does all of the dice damage, like after multiplying, she would use swipe or whirlwind strike. And if she could do crits on the swipe, they both took.
You could stack cleave and the crit specialization?
Well, yeah, because the crit specialization said each of them got a crit, and each of them then took the extra damage from the other persons. And so they took an obscene amount. She had swipe, and you get a +1 when you attack with swipe with an axe, right? Because
that's so
got
broken.
The sweep trait. and she's a fighter, so she already had a +2. She added another +1. So
they fixed that.
She was flanking. Her chance of critting everything was just like always. And she always crit, and she did massive amounts of damage. She had a dwarven war axe. She usually used the shield, but when she two-handed it and crit, she could tear through stuff. So anyway, I need to check.
Oh no, it's still there. It's still there on that axe.
People were asking if it got stronger because they said it was too weak, but I think it's still the same.
Holy cow.
It's good in the right situations. It's obviously not good for fighting a solo level +3 boss, which is what some percentage of everyone do their entire analysis of what's good and what's not based on that.
Yes.
To be fair.
Absolutely.
And it is absolutely not good against that.
Yeah. I'm sad to see that brawling didn't get changed. It feels really bad that brawling you need to critically hit, and then they have to fail a save to get.
Wait, but that's the same thing we were just talking about with the trip from Hammer. It should have a save. It's taking away an action automatically. That's why the trip one was the problem.
Oh, I'm not saying slowed one should be automatic. No. That's too strong.
You're saying change it to something completely different.
It just feels bad that I critically hit, but it still might not do anything.
That is a very reasonable argument that could be made that all of the ones, including the trip one, should be changed to something weaker and then not add a save, so there's not a second D20 roll for both
that too.
Speeding up the game and so that you don't crit and not get anything.
Yeah,
However,
I think Stupefy.
I can see the other side of wanting powerful abilities.
Sure, but I feel like that's what
happen every time.
I feel like that's what feats are for, though.
Yeah, that's fair. You're right. You could have that as an optional feat where it's like, optionally, instead of doing this other smaller thing, you can gamble on getting the big thing on a saving throw or something like that. I could see that as being able to choose your critical specializations with brawling.
That would be neat as a fighter thing. Yeah,
where it's like, okay, initially they're clumsy because I hit them in a joint. Clumsy one, but then you have this feat where instead of that, you can forego the clumsy one to give them a saving throw, or else they get stunned. Right. And then you decide, and you're like, well, maybe I won't do that on this level +3 boss that has high fortitude and will succeed on any D20 roll. Or maybe I'll do the clumsy on that one.
Or you could just be a fighter. Real quick, sorry, I want to see, did they fix disrupting shot? Because that is still, in my opinion, one of the most broken feats in the entire game.
It's ridiculously powerful. I had a fighter critting with disrupting shot that was just like, they're done because they're crit, so they're stuck to the ground.
Yeah.
And they also lose an action, so what are they even going to do?
Slowed one, right? Yep. Yeah, 2 actions. If you hit their slowed one, you want to talk about just taking away actions. On the fighter, I don't care if the boss is 2 levels higher. They're a fighter. They're going to normal hit on their first attack.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That's so dumb.
It's very, very good.
I only have
the person who wrote it initially, very early in the design process. It's very, very powerful. It's ridiculously strong.
So I only have about 10-15 minutes left. I gotta go pick up my dog from the hospital.
Oh, buddy.
Oh, she's okay. She had to get her gallbladder removed. So yes, she's actually.
I didn't even know dogs had gallbladders.
Actually there's a world famous veterinary hospital in Stamford, Connecticut. Believe it or not, it's a hospital just for animals. So she's crazy. Anyhow, we're gonna go pick her up. But so now is the time. If you have questions, get them in. And also before the end of the stream, I'll get you the animated tokens. You can see them on the Kickstarter, and you could download an example too. The Kickstarter is awesome. And obviously for Pathfinder, you get everything in Path Builder. You're going to get to talk to everyone else in the Roll for Combat Discord. Every month you get a new ancestry. It's a lot of fun. People love it because every month you get to talk with everyone and see what cool things you can do. And then here's the schedule for the rest of this week and next week. For those of you who want to talk, I want to know all about Wizard. I want to know all about Ranger. Well, you're going to get to talk to me and Mark and one special guest. And who do we got on? We got confirmed. We have Linda Zayas Palmer for one. We've got
Jessica Redicott. We've got Grady. We've got Rules Lawyer. We've got Ian from Foundry in one of them. We've got
no, that's not Ian. That's different.
That's not Ian. It's a different person. Okay, we've got a non-Ian. I thought they were all Ians.
No, they were all Ians too.
No, that's not it. There's a lot of Ians. We have someone from Foundry helping us. We have Derek, because can't do Derek.
Well, you always got Derek at some point, right?
We always have a Derek.
We have Nonat, obviously, right now. We have Anto from
Anto's great.
Yeah, Anto's coming in.
Awesome.
I think he's doing Wizard. I think he was really excited to do Wizard.
Yeah.
Nice.
So the Ruffian Rogue guy is giving another clarification, which is that non-agile, non-finesse sneak attacks don't extend to unarmed attacks. I mean,
so like
that
if
looks
you're
like that is correct. I mean, if it did, then it would extend to like some D10 and D12 stuff from the Barbarian. I'm sure that if you're using like a weaker non-finesse unarmed attack, that if I was your GM, I would have no reason not to let you do it on like, this ancestry gave a D6 Jaws that was not finesse.
Yeah.
Especially given that the D8 agile finesse monk stance things can be used with thief, I would be okay with that, but not if it was like a D12 or D10 gigantic unarmed attack that you got from some like spell or from like a barbarian multi-class.
By the way.
Yeah, are the stance attacks given by monk stances? Those aren't weapons, though, right? So like the wolf stance,
they are unarmed attacks, which thief now can use.
Only thief, not ruffian.
Yes, ruffian can't do its ability to use all simple and martial weapons, as long as their die size is small enough, does not apply to unarmed strikes.
Gotcha. But if you took monastic weaponry and then entered a stance, would it work? Because you're using the monk
it's still
weapon.
not a weapon.
Oh, it's still considered an unarmed strike? Even
It's
with
still an unarmed attack. It's still not a weapon.
Interesting.
So I saw a bunch of questions go through. And so the last thing, unless there's a super chat, about like components being removed. Because components are being removed. That means you can use spells that used to have material components while having your hands full. They're still incantations and gestures. There's no rules for them. They just say that they exist. And people are asking about the subtle trait and what's the deal with that. So I actually found the subtle trait to be a little bit underspecified. I was maybe I missed something when I searched the book. I was desperately looking for more explanation of it than what I found, which is that it says there's no obvious manifestations. So it doesn't just like blare it out to everybody. But I thought they would say somewhere it's like, well, in which case, if you're trying to hide it, roll some skill against the person's perception, because they obviously can't mean that it's completely unnoticeable by everybody, and you can just cast an infinite number of subtle spells with a conceal spell feat in the middle of a crowded room, and the archmages who are there won't notice your 4th level wizard doing it. But it doesn't say it all, so I think it's going to be in a lot of, unless I missed, I think there's going to be a lot of table variation for how do you find them then if they're not obvious, but they're also not completely invisible and unnoticeable.
It does specifically say without incantation, so you are not saying
you definitely are not incanting.
So as long as you're like,
and it says it doesn't have obvious manifestations, but that doesn't mean that it's completely nothing is happening.
Yeah, I'd say it would be nice to have a perception DC or something. Yeah, but the
standard for PF2 would usually be everybody rolls something. Maybe it's perception against your spell DC, for example.
That's pretty cool.
That's a pretty reasonable thing to roll, right? But the standard for Pathfinder 2 is it never just always works when a 1st level person tries to do this against a 20th level archmage, usually, or 20th level investigator with high perception. Usually there's some kind of roll involved. It doesn't tell me at all what that roll is. I just gave you a house roll that I might use as a GM for that, and I think could be a pretty reasonable one, but I also may have missed a page where it gave more guidance. Other than that, I think it's a really neat way to get that down in one single trait, which I really like. If it just also told me what to do about that, probably a check against another check. Could be also Arcana, Religion, or Nature against Perception DC.
An interesting thing about that under Melodious spell for Bard is this is a 1-action spell shape that gives your next spell the subtle trait. This hides the Shining Rune, Spark of Magic, and other manifestations. However, it only hides the spell casting actions, not its effect. So an observer might still see a ray streak out from you or see you vanish into thin air.
Yes.
So the effects are still visible and they originate from you unless said otherwise. A fireball still fires out of your hand.
That's already clear. But let's say that you had at-will charm and you go into an embassy and you're like level 4 or something. You picked up at-will charm on I got a low-level charm on like an item. You have conceal spell. Like, you presumably can't just go around charming everybody an infinite number of times and never be noticed, even though maybe they have like high-level people there watching for you. Like, there's probably something magic that could. But the spell didn't work. So yeah, if you keep doing it until you succeed. Once you've succeeded, people might sense motive that somebody was charmed.
Right. Well, I forget. I can't find charm in here. Do targets know they've been charmed if they succeed?
I think charm is in there somewhere. I think that's on a critical success only.
They realize on a success
not on a regular success, but that may have changed. That's how it was before.
Yeah.
The point is that there's presumably some way, because it says it's not obvious, but doesn't say it's completely utterly at the point where it doesn't matter how good you are at perceiving, there's nothing that can be seen, especially since they still have the manipulate trait if they have the manipulate trait, which means that you still trigger a reactive strike. So there's something that people saw to make the reactive strike when you cast the spell, right?
That's true. Your hands are still
There's
moving.
obvious something is going on that triggered a reactive strike. And so there must be some check that's involved of hiding that it was spell casting. You might just think, oh, they were just kind of flailing, doing a Kermit flail. So yes, charm is critical success there where you try to charm them, but success is they don't know. So, and I'm not even just talking about the ones that are subtle because they have subtle like charm, but there's also obviously if you have the conceal spell feat or melodious spell, but conceal spell especially for wizards because melodious you have to hide it in a song,
right?
Whereas concealed spell you don't. So if you're just around, you're casting all of your spells that aren't like literally a fireball. Presumably, there's some kind of check in there. I'm sure that could be like FAQ'd.
Yeah.
And I really like what they did with it once an FAQ is out, telling people what to do, or just come up with a house rule using the rules that are in the player core, or it's actually the GM core about improvising rules and rulings, which are the same as they were in the core rulebook. And usually they're like, some check is involved. It'll be about the related things. It'll be against the DC based on the modifier of the other person. So it's easy to figure it out anyway, but I'm not looking forward to like rules arguments of players who want to say that they're literally unnoticeable. Yeah. While they have concealed spell, all their feats are unnoticeable forever.
Yeah.
At like a organized play table or something like that.
Steven, you falling asleep over there?
Nope. I'm actually looking at other things.
We've done it, and I don't see. Oh wait, there's one more. Omega Rogue LP. It's related to this. This is our last super chat related to this. Is what about the Case She from Year of Monsters? Because they can't. They have restrictions on spells they can cast depending on what components the spell needs. So how would that work if the spell has no components listed? I would generally say the easy thing to do is look to see if it has manipulate. Then it's like a somatic. If it has concentrate, then it's like a verbal. And so it's easy to convert them back and forth because all the spells that used to have verbal and somatic have a concentrate and manipulate in the same place. And yes, that got rid of material, but I don't think that mattered.
Nobody's used material components in 15 years.
I mean, they exist in the 3-action spells.
Oh, they do, but it's always assumed that you have a focus or the wizard just comes with a bag or you just took eschew components. Like once you integrate a feat to just ignore an entire rule of the game, it's like, why is that rule even there?
Yeah.
Well, you have to take the feat. That's why.
I can say this. I always found it to be a chore, personally, to keep track of all the little components. But I was running a game like a while ago for a group of new players. And one of the players, they were getting attacked by harpies. And she is like, okay, so my illusionist has a bunch of wool for the spell Minor Image. Because it's the material component for it. I guess pulling the wool over their eyes was the pun. A lot of them were pun things. And so she's like, can I stuff the wool in my ears to try to get a bonus against the song?
Sure. Yeah.
And I was like, this is one of the most creative things with material components I've seen in my entire DMing career. And I've been running and playing these games for decades, and I've never seen anything before or since that was like that. But I can tell you that one time somebody once did something awesome with material components. I don't think it's worth it for that one time, unfortunately.
Yeah. I especially with how every class can have like a focus now to get around it. I think it's very much more of a flavorful character choice rather than something that needs to be mechanically tracked.
Yeah.
So
there we go.
Some quick questions. I'm looking at some questions. People have been asking about runes. Runes are actually in GM Core, by the way.
Yep.
So we'll go through that. But
they're pretty similar for the most part. There's also some shield runes. We can talk about it in GM Core.
I think it's changed a lot.
The shield runes. It's very interesting because fundamentally, like fully and easily fixing the shield rune, like the shield scaling issue. So basically impossible to do in the baseline economy because of the way that levels and item scales. I was able to luck out and take the easy route out because it was redoing items entirely for monster parts and created scaling like that. The shield runes managed to navigate around some very dangerous waters by putting some very smart things into them. There's a few corner cases, one of which is actually an item that's in the GM core, so we'll talk about that, where you might want to make some adjustments on the upper end so that you don't kind of. The problem was before everybody either took sturdy shields if they wanted to do a lot of blocking, sturdy shields, or if they found it because it was rare, indestructible shield, which blocked for like 2/3 as much, but an infinite number of times. And you could just literally with the right fighter feat at level 20 block 3 times against one opponent and then once against every other opponent. Now, this brilliant system of runes and the specific things they did with it will allow you to theoretically to use a bunch of other shields. Unfortunately, it can also be used in indestructible shield to make one uber shield that costs almost exactly the same amount as the 19th level sturdy shield while also being indestructible. And it works out that way. So there's a few small things you could do, like lowering the maximum on hardness, that only even matters in a few corner cases where the base item is adamantine. And it would take this beautiful way of navigating around these pitfalls and get rid of those last few corner cases where it's just like, if your GM lets you have an indestructible shield, there's no longer any question. There's no other shield that you would ever use unless another shield was created that was so powerful that it just kind of creeped the game up to be something else that could compete with that.
So how about this for last questions? Each of you go over what your favorite and least favorite changes were.
Favorite is disarm. I just love that disarm.
I know, we didn't bring that up, by the way.
That's a good one.
Disarm is fantastic.
We did bring it up. We did
bring it up a while back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Barely.
Least favorite change. I don't even know if you'd call it a change, but my least favorite change is how difficult it is to find the specific changes. There's no, unless they make a big compilation similar to how they do with the erratas of here is everything that has been changed in a document, it's going to be tough. I think there are going to be people playing this game for the next 2 years who have already been playing for a year who will not realize reposition exists until 2026 because they never looked at the athletic skill check section.
Yeah. What about you, Mark?
I just really like the new names. They're so evocative and fun.
Not what I would have thought.
What?
That's not what I was like. Of all the things, new names is not what I
like
think.
them. There's just so many fun names on there.
Well, let's see. I kind of went over in the beginning. Like my favorite things is my favorite thing is the layout and design of the book. I think it's vastly improved. Not that it was bad before, but like, look, you got a book this big. It's hard to lay out and design correctly the first time, but they've had a lot of time to think about it and they know how people play now. So it's just way smoother now that I'm looking at it. And as I said, the color looks better. The font choices are actually much better. Little things like that, which will add to the overall usability of this as a product for everyone who's trying to learn the game or even continue to play it. And least favorite is the same as No Nets. It's like, it's just someone will put it together. I guarantee it, but it's like I need to see a change document. I want to see a change document between the first book and this one because there's a lot and it's so much. It's like right now we're trying to figure it out ourselves and it's hard to know what changed. And sometimes it's as little as a lot of times it's just a naming convention. That's the vast majority of the changes.
Or it's one sentence added to a paragraph that already looks the same.
Sentence that's different, and it's very easy to miss. And that's actually going to be very important. And what I'm going to actually ask all my players to do once Path Builder is updated is like make your characters. And they're level 15, or actually about to come level 16. So it's like, make a level 16 character pre and post, and let's do a comparison because I guarantee things are going to change. And then, because of certain, rules have been adjusted, I'm probably, and I'm curious how everyone's going to handle this, I'm probably going to have them have the ability to respec their characters.
I think every single campaign, long form campaign in the world gets they should get a free respec point. Try to keep I would usually rule the theme of your character. Don't change your ancestry. Don't change from a fighter to a magus. But take some different feats, allocate skills differently if you want to. Yeah.
I mean,
there's just so much that's cool. And also so much that's still cool because it's the same game that we once again, like I said at the beginning, we were going to focus on changes mostly because this is a stream about the remastered changes. And most of you watching this know what was in the original, but it's really, really mostly the same.
Yeah, even after 2 hours streaming and talking about nothing but changes, we're still kind of stretching like, oh, hey, this spell has a new name.
There's not that much, but I can see it for, I'm thinking my players, like if you're starting a new campaign or you're level like 1 through 5 or even 7, there's going to be some changes. But my guys at level 15, their characters are complex. And there's a lot of synergies. And now even just one small change can change all the synergies for the character. So I can totally see them wanting to go back and respec. And I think that's what you're going to be hearing about is like,
you got to be fair and let them respec.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to, everyone who's playing this, definitely if you're a GM, let your guys respec, let your players respec, let them change things. And heck, if they're low enough level and they're like, you know what, there's some new ancestries here and now feats, can I respec? I mean, I don't think it's put it this way, I don't think I would allow it at much higher level or adventure path, but if they're pretty low, I think it's okay. I mean, that's me personally, because there's a lot. That's one thing. It's like maybe you couldn't be a Leshy before. Well, now you can, very easily. So
as long as it doesn't destroy the core of the character, I'm fine with it. Like, it sounds drastic, but I just recently respect my barbarian who was using the Sinclair's stone instinct. I respect him into an earth gate kineticist. Character still plays, acts, his story, all the exact same. He still covers himself in rocks. Now, just instead of swinging a tower shield around as a weapon, he throws rocks with his elemental blast.
That's super cool. Sometimes the entire class can change, and it's not going to change the concept. Absolutely.
All right.
Steven probably needs to take his dog to.
I gotta go.
Probably
go. Yes, I gotta go. But anyhow, thanks, Nonat, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to your Dungeons and Dragons sweatshirt.
Irony.
Representing the D&D community. I don't know what that's all about.
I like D&D. It's fun.
And we're going to be here all week. And what do you have? Here's the schedule. And wait, you're doing stuff too. Everyone's doing stuff. Everyone's doing things.
Yeah, we're all doing stuff. It's going to be awesome.
I'm vomiting out 4 videos this week. I will be... Do you mind if I plug?
Yeah, of course.
Go for it.
So this Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, I will be doing a live stream of Sinclair's Almanac, showing off the classes, showing off the archetypes, all the brand new stuff. So if you've ever been curious about Sinclair's, I know we've been talking about it for about a long time now. It's finally available because first Kickstarters are hard. And I'll be showing it all off, might give you the information you need if you want to pick it up or not. So Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Otherwise, every single day this week and next week, I'm going to be vomiting out remaster content, going over every change I can find. That's over on youtube.com/nonat1s.
There you go. And then Mark and I will be here as usual. And Mark and I will be on the Roll for Combat Discord if you have any questions. And I know Mark is on the Reddit all the time and he's answering questions. Basically, the next 2 weeks is answering questions about remaster, and I'm sure you will all have it in your inbox very soon. I see everyone's like, where is it, it's like, it'll be there. So anyhow, thanks everyone. Thanks, Nonat. Otherwise, we will see you tomorrow at 3. We'll be doing the Bard with Grady.
It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be fun. Thanks everyone.
Bye.